sometime in the break. Feel lower.
For the first time yesterday.
All right, let's go ahead and come back to our regular meeting and continue our agenda. We left off at our 1 p.m. and that is item 6.13. This was continued from February 6, 2024. It's a public hearing, consideration of an ordinance amending the purchasing ordinance Article 10 of Chapter 2 of the Lake County Code to include increased purchasing limits, additional definitions, modify requirements for exemptions from competitive bidding, and additional procedures for informal and formal bidding. And from what I understand, CAO Parker, you wish to push this to?
I wish to push it to March 19th for a time certain at 9:45.
March 19th, time certain, 9:45. Okay. Any questions or comments from board members before I open it up for public comment? Seeing none, anyone from the public wish to speak on the postponing of the item, not the item itself? And seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for action to continue this to date certain.
So moved.
Second.
And just for
We need to
clarification,
clarify.
March 19, 9:45 a.m.
Okay, we have a motion for that exact date and time and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are now going to move to our 1:02 p.m. item 6.14, consideration of Lake County Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee's recommendation to allocate $8,000 from the Fish and Game Fund to support the 2024 Clear Lake Science Symposium. And welcome to the dais.
Which way you going?
We have Angela Dow, De Palma, and Greg Giusti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Ms. Parker, good to see you all. Here today to recommend on behalf of the Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee that $8,000 in the fund be allocated to support the upcoming Clear Lake Science Symposium. For members of the public that don't know about the fund, these are monies that are collected by the county through the courts, that actions of the court that levy fines for fish and game violations. The fund is explicit in how it can be spent, and it is those funds are to be spent for the conservation, education, protection of fish and wildlife resources, including their habitats in the county of Lake. So we currently have about the account currently has about $32,000 in it. This year we had allocated about 20 for the, I've been on this committee since 1997, so I do it for the money and the glory. Yeah, we've traditionally allocated about half of the total amount, keeping half in reserve, just to always have money. So this year we spent a little bit of money early on to support the carp eradication project. There's about $12,000 in this current budget cycle, as we're asking for about $8,000 of that to be used to support a very strong educational program. I asked Angela to come up. She's spearheading the event, so I'd like her to fill in the gaps and answer any questions you may have specifically about what we're proposing to do.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Angela De Palma Dow. I work for Lake County Water Resources and Invasive Species Program Coordinator in the Water Resource Department. And we are planning to put on the Clear Lake Integrated Science Symposium. It'll be August 15th to the 16th, 2024. I have provided some flyers of the event for the public, and I have some for the board and admin here. Oh, yes. We also have a website for the symposium, and John has linked. Thank you. The goal for this is to provide a comprehensive review of current research and management on California's largest and most ancient lake, its surrounding watershed and tributaries. And there has not been a Clear Lake Science Symposium for a good 20 years at least. We had one in 97, 98. These are the proceedings of them. I dusted them off today from our shelf upstairs to show you. Oh, they're pretty fragile. Here you go, Greg. So there's been a lot of research and a lot of management, a lot of things that have changed. And then there's been some things that haven't changed. And all of this needs to be put together in one review so we can best make decisions going forward for management actions. So what's being shown on the screen is the website for this. So we have the flyer there. We already have some funding from the Integrated Regional Water Management West Side SAC Group. We got a small grant there. We also have contribution from the Yolo County or Yolo Flood Protection District, Water Conservation District. And then we also have other fundraising requests that are out with the community and the cities. And it's going to be about 50 grand is what we're estimating to put this on. We're proposing to have it at Robinson Rancheria. We did a tour of the conference center there, and that'll meet the expected in-person attendance of about 200 people, plus some exhibitors and sponsors, and best able to accommodate the agency's partners and researchers. To be clear, this is an educational event. It is focused on the science, so it is aimed for the researchers, but because we have technology available to us, we're going to create a digital binder that will basically record everything that's presented, all the information that's shared, and that is going to be accessible for the public going on into the future. So you don't have to come to our office and look at a 200-page proceedings if you want to get information. You can go online and have everything at your fingertips, along with links to the data that the researchers are using, and funding links and other notes. So with that, I'll take any questions. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and let's start with...
I think it's a great investment. Thank you for bringing this to us.
Okay. Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you. Very supportive of the symposium, and thank you for being proactive. But I don't see a proposed budget for the event, so this 8K is important, but 50K is a big price tag too. So I want to just ask briefly, I'm not going to ask for the full event breakdown, but it would have been helpful for this particular item. But as you're still fundraising with other agencies and all that, do you need to come back with a budget request, or is there stuff in the department? How are we going to get you over the top of that 50K?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, Supervisor Green. And there is no budget included because the time that the request went to the committee, the budget was a little different as we're getting costs for things and identifying the schedule for the event and what we want to do, cost change and estimates change, as well as the contributions and the promised like in-kind and committed resources. So I do have a rough budget, and we do have some internal funds going towards that. We have some pockets of outreach funds budgeted through various programs. We also have, again, some committed funds that are coming in and then funds that are out. So I can't say right now that we'll be coming back for more funds. That's a possibility. But at this time, we're chunking away at our 50 grand goal.
Okay. Well, if there's consensus at the board, definitely I'm going to support this, but I'm a little concerned that, you know, any time you're spent fundraising, that's obviously time you can't spend on programming, and this is, we really do want to do the science here. So I'll be supporting this today, but if there's consensus to do a check-in in a month or two, just make sure you're on track for what your ultimate deliverables will be with the symposium, and also to inform us if there's something we can do to get you over the top. You know, I'm sure I would be willing to contribute a little discretionary funding if needed to do that. But if the board would like a check-in a little closer to the event, I think that would be, I would support that as well.
Thank you for your comments. Any comments on that request? I would say it's just good to advertise anyways, and you can use this as a platform to make sure that you get the most amount of people to show up and get informed and educated. So I don't think it's a bad thing for you to come back and let us know where you are, and decisions would have to be made then if there is a request. But I don't think there's a problem with hearing more about the symposium, especially as we get closer to the symposium. Is everybody okay with that? Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And let's go ahead and open up for public comment. Anyone wish to speak on this item? We have a hand up on Zoom. Kyle B. I'm going to assume I know the last name, but I'm going to wait.
Yeah, hi, Kyle, Bill. I appreciate, I think this is a great opportunity. I would also, I don't know if it's a part of the planning for the symposium, to also incorporate indigenous knowledge, into the history and the, the efforts that we've been passed down with how to care for the lake and the natural resources from a cultural and an indigenous perspective. It would be great to also have that voice represented, just to acknowledge that Western knowledge, is fairly new, and the health and wellness of the lake. And so to have that indigenous perspective, someone from the tribe to speak on that would be great.
Thank you very much for your comment. Did you have a response to that? I know you were kind of discussing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Kyle, for your comments. I will say the website for this event, if you scroll down to the bottom, we have 2 planning meetings. We had one in November. We have another one scheduled in April. And at the planning meeting, it was hybrid, but in person we did have 3 tribal EPA governments participating to make sure that the information and their concerns were incorporated into the fundamental planning of this event. And so they're going to be involved throughout the scope to the event. So thank you for the comments. And if there's any other way that we can make sure that happens, please reach out to me, and I can do that. But yes, we are incorporating that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comment? And seeing none, I'll coming back to the board for action.
If there's nothing further, Honorable Chair, I move to approve Lake County Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee's recommendation to allocate $8,000 from the Fish and Game Fund to support the 2024 Clear Lake Science Symposium.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Looking
very
forward
much.
to a good event. Just a quick side note, earlier in the year, you designated the Fish and Wildlife Advisory Committee to take a lead on hitch communications and information. That action has created a wonderful network of collaborative efforts among a broad spectrum of people in Lake County, individuals, tribes, landowners, and even some agencies that now realize that people of Lake County have something to say about the hitch. So it's really, that simple action of yours has really helped serve as a catalyst to get people talking, sharing information. The committee just met this last week, and it was, there's a network out there watching for fish, recording fish, sharing information. So that was a good call on your part. Thank you for doing that. I think the fish will benefit, and so will everybody's knowledge base and the lake as well. So thanks. Good call.
Thank you for your comment. Let's go ahead and move on to our 6:15. I guess I should have said we needed 4/5 vote for that, but we got the 4/5, so we're good. Our 1:15 p.m. A, consideration of letter requesting support from State Department of Water Resources. B, approval of resolution authorizing the grant application, acceptance, and execution for the Potter Valley Project decommissioning Lake County water supply impact and technical assessment, authorizing the chair to sign. And we have Mr. Rothstein and Mr. Sullivan. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Board. Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer. The California Department of Water Resources has regularly met with county staff and Supervisors Crandall and Sabatier over the past several months to discuss potential consequences of PG&E's Potter Valley Project decommissioning proposal. Recently, DWR identified available funding for Lake County to examine the potential water supply effects that would result if Lake Pillsbury were lost. Approximately $700,000 is available to conduct a technical assessment to estimate the effects of the decommissioning process, including dam removal, and evaluate potential adaptations, provide cost estimates, and evaluate other strategies for implementing mitigations. The information that this assessment would provide is critical for upcoming state and federal proceedings pertaining to the proposed decommissioning and could inform decision-making for applicable bodies and other interested parties. The county must approve a letter requesting support before DWR can proceed any further in the grant process. At this time, the proposal is in the preliminary stages, and the expectation is that it will continue to be refined, working with DWR. In addition to the letter, the DWR grant requires an authorizing resolution. The resolution language that was put before your board has been vetted by DWR, and so staff's recommendation is to continue use of that proposed language. You will have also seen both documents, the letter and the resolution were included in your board's agenda packet, and there's more detail in the letter in terms of what the work is expected to entail. One final note of explanation, the categories that were used in the task description portion of the letter are left intentionally broad, and that's, as previously alluded, in consideration of the fact that we will be continuing to work with DWR to further refine the specific work to be undertaken. Staff recommends that your board approve the letter and adopt the resolution and authorize the chair to sign both documents. And many thanks to our Treasurer Tax Collector, Patrick Sullivan, for his tremendous support of the county's pursuit of this funding opportunity.
Thank you very much. Mr. Sullivan, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just add, similarly, the letter, the language in the letter was also vetted through DWR staff. There was considerable back and forth to make sure that we got everything in there that they needed. There were very particular points that had to be highlighted because of the nature of this funding. So similar to the resolution, I would just encourage your board to understand that the letter is just a starting point. DWR made that clear. This is what they need to proceed, and we can refine the rest of it later. We didn't have time to go any deeper without further assistance.
And we needed to also rush. There was a deadline to meet before in order to access funds because of the fiscal year deadline. Vice Chair Crandall? would you like-
Yes, no, I just wanted to, just highlight that I appreciate all the work that, we've all been putting into this, of course, and even the board, because since I've been on dealing with this in the district and whatnot, we've been asking for this information in general. This is what we've been asking even at the two-basin solution and everything like that. So we're finally at a point where we can get some of this and get some of the answers we need, or at least have some explanation. And so, but the work that you two put into it, you're the tax collector now, and you're still helping us, and we appreciate that. Matthew, great job all the time coordinating this. And so, yeah, this is important, and I'm glad that we're moving forward with it.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm really excited about the teamwork. In order to get to this point, this conversation was taking a left turn, and we brought it back exactly where we needed it to. It was difficult, and we thought we actually had lost access to this type of grant, and suddenly things changed and turned around for us, and we moved fast in order to get this on the agenda to make sure that we don't miss this access. This is exactly based on the last presentation that Vice Chair Crandall and I gave to the Russian River Forum about our concerns about if the dam is decommissioned and its impacts not just to Lake County, obviously, but its impacts downstream to the water users, agricultural users, and the fish. And that data has been lacking, and yet things are still moving forward with the momentum that it's okay to do this without knowing all the data. And so I think that having the data will help us to better understand, be better prepared, and possibly continue to have what we want to keep in the future. We'll see what happens with that. So, Supervisor Green.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this. Probably is worded purposefully broad, but I think that's my concern with this letter is the breadth of it. On page 2 of the letter, under the proposed scope of work B, I see baseline conditions plus 1 or 2 decommissioning scenarios. This board has previously gone on record opposed to decommissioning, so I think it's important to do this kind of work. But I guess my question is the breadth. How much breadth can we put in at this early phase of this? Because definitely we have to look at all the scenarios that have been presented, but I'm counting at least 4 scenarios, and I'm seeing maybe 1 or 2 or 3 in here. So if this is as titled, basically a study of decommissioning, that's one thing, but if we're looking for modeling of existing conditions, such as, for example, status quo, with the gates lowered, with or without the seismic risk in there. The status quo with the gate ladders, possibly with a fish ladder improvement. In previous iterations in the two-basin solution, I think talk of partial decommissioning was raised by Sonoma Water. And then, of course, there are two scenarios proposed in the decommissioning plan presently, and one is a rapid removal, and the other one would be a phased removal over a period of years with some amount of sediment deposit involved in that. So again, I want to be supportive. I know you guys put a lot of work into this, but if this is as billed, basically a study focused on decommissioning and decommissioning only, I don't want to undervalue this grant's ability to study some project alternatives that we have talked about for years here at this board, including saving the dam in some fashion. So do I understand this as a decommissioning-centered effort that would preclude by default any notion of studying of keeping the current baseline operations?
Would you like to respond to that, or would you like one of us to respond?
I can briefly respond, just that, as Patrick raised, the scope is not final. In this iteration, we hear your feedback, and I can't promise you what flexibility will be provided later in the process, but I don't know if Patrick has any further comment.
Yeah, in conversations with GWR, they also raised the possibility of working with one of their consultants to help craft the final agreement and refine this more. So this really is just sort of a very broad draft. This is what they believe they can accommodate with our funding. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know how in-depth we'll be able to go on any one topic. I think this is broad enough. I don't think it's really precluding anything. But yeah, in terms of the language that's here, this is what was developed to fit the available funding, and I really don't have answers to your questions beyond that.
So I will say that I think you're looking at eating the entire elephant at the same time rather than taking a bite out of the elephant. In order for us to have the data to better understand what others are planning, because this is not our plan, we have to be able to have apples to apples and not apples to oranges. And so having a study that completely defers to what is being planned will not allow us to approach FERC in the appropriate way with the appropriate data to say, this is a flawed idea or this is flawed thinking. Here's the data that we have. You got to think about the 10-year droughts. You got to think about the 10-year floods. How is this going to work in this case? Now, I know that you see a lot of words that say decommissioning, but the whole conversation began because of the term climate change and the idea of what is the true hydrology of the area, because we can't rely on the idea, oh, 1920, here's a picture, here's what it looked like. If the dam goes away, it's going to look exactly the same. The world is not that same place. Things are vastly different. And so we need to better understand what exactly is going to be there to support our needs, to support the other communities' needs that are impacted by it. And that, to me, is the perspective of how we're approaching this, because FERC doesn't want to see us submit a new plan. We're past that point. FERC wants to see us speak to the plan that has been submitted. PG&E is not going to submit a plan about adding a fish ladder. And so we need to provide data about what PG&E's plan will or will not do and where our concerns lie. So I think this fits perfectly, but it's step one out of multiple steps that can come out of the data that we are able to identify. I don't know if that helps, but that's my perspective on it, is this is a multi-step plan, not a one step and we're done, we have everything we need.
I think that I think it's vague enough to cover any adjustments that we need and if they'll allow. So I understand what you're saying, though, Supervisor Green. With what we've been in the past, most recent couple months, we've been really accentuating some opposition and specific decommissioning. However, with this, I know decommissioning is mentioned a lot, like Supervisor Sabatier said or Chair Sabatier said. But at the same time, 1 or 2 decommissioning scenarios kind of like is broad enough in case, you've talked about partial decommissioning and other things like that. I think that gives us enough leeway. And I think it's just better to stay kind of in a vague situation for this until we can get further and find out what we can identify further if needed. I don't know, that's just my opinion.
I would add the underlying basis for this funding, the reason the state's able to provide it, is the potential loss of water supply. That is what actually is our gateway into this. So we had to articulate why we are facing a potential loss of water supply. Once that loss is identified, we were able to expand the scope of this and roll in these other areas we want to look at. But the underlying issue that's actually making us eligible for the funding is the potential loss of water supply that would come with the destruction of Lake Pillsbury and the decommissioning. So that's our gateway into this, just to clarify where this funding is coming from.
Hopefully that helps in answering some of your questions. Any further comments or questions from the board? Open it up for public comment. Any comments on this item? Please come on up.
So this will not close any doors to being able to try to keep the lake, is that correct? We're not closing the doors.
Our plan A is to keep the dam and keep the lake, and we are standing strong on that.
Okay, I just want to make sure the verbiage.
What was your name?
My name is Helen Owen, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Just making sure we didn't hear that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And seeing none, bringing it back for action.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve letter requesting support from the State of Department of Water Resources. So I got to do them separately, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So do the letter first, right?
So we have a motion.
Yeah.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries.
I offer the resolution.
The resolution's been offered.
Supervisor Crandall,
Aye.
Supervisor Green,
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska.
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier.
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just in time for our 1:30 p.m. Item 6.16A, consideration of a brief update from Train US Incorporated on the North Lakeport Fire Main Linked Auxiliary Supply Hydraulic Energy Storage, AKA FLASHES, projects for the Poe Mountain Upper Lake and Hartley projects. B, consideration of a resolution authorizing Train to develop and submit 2 microgrid incentive program grant applications at no direct cost to the county. C, consideration of agreements for MIP application preparation services. Mr. Rothstein, I pass it on to you.
So, and just an update, Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer, I'll provide a brief update, and then Mr. Day is here to answer any further questions that your board has following that update. As your board is aware, Train US Incorporated has been diligently working to explore development of a fire main linked auxiliary supply hydraulic energy storage facility, or FLASHES, consisting of the Poe Mountain Upper Lake and Poe Mountain Hartley projects. Your board has previously expressed strong interest in entering into a lease agreement for these projects to be sited on county property located in North Lakeport, assuming certain conditions can be met and community benefits conveyed. You may likewise recall that Train conducted a solicitation process for firms to develop the Poe Mountain FLASHES projects in late 2022 and early 2023. Ultimately, despite the fact that these projects use well-established and mature technologies, the responding firms received this particular combination as first of its kind and were unwilling to assume the risk of funding next steps in the development process. And Train estimates completion of activities such as geotechnical exploration, hydrologic review, regulatory filings, interconnection, and the CEQA process for the North Lakeport Poe Mountain projects will cost around $2 to $3.5 million in total. And based on their due diligence efforts in connection with the solicitation process, Train also believes that undertaking these steps up front would substantially reduce investor risk and increase interest in developing the projects. So consequently, over the past year, Train has been exploring opportunities on 2 fronts. First of those fronts is working directly with entities that could secure their own grant or other public funding to reduce project risk. And pathway number 2, evaluating grant opportunities that could cover the risk capital costs directly. On front 1, California Community Power, which is a conglomerate of community choice aggregators, is expected to release a solicitation for projects in April or May. Their board has already approved release of that solicitation process. And Train believes that the Po Mountain projects will be a strong fit, in part because of their use of domestic materials appears to map well to opportunities facilitated by the Inflation Reduction Act. On front 2, PG&E's microgrid incentive program appears to be a strong fitting grant opportunity. And Train indicates the program could potentially ultimately cover up to $3 million in risk capital expenses. The specific item before your board today seeks authorization for Train to apply for 2 $25,000 development grants. And if these grants are awarded, they would partially cover Train's own costs associated with full microgrid incentive program grant application development. The county will have no obligation, as was previously stated, to cover expenses Train incurs should the grants ultimately not be awarded. For your board's awareness, PG&E has also signaled that they expect to require microgrid incentive program applicants to sign a non-disclosure agreement. That document is not finalized at this time on PG&E's end, and that's why it's not included in your board packet as of right now. So Michael Day of Train, as you see, is here to answer any further questions that you may have. And staff recommends that your board, A, provide direction to staff as needed, B, adopt the resolution, and C, approve the 2 associated grant development agreements. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Mr. Day, would you like to add anything or wait for questions?
I would like to say we're still really interested in this project, as evidenced by the fact that I'm here and the fact that we're continuing to work on them. Not all projects are like that. Some people may have heard that we were looking at a project for County of Humboldt. It didn't pass our screen and we turned it down. We were working with North Shore Fire Protection District for a while, and we came across some things that made us doubt the ability of that project in the current environment to move forward. And so we said thank you to them and walked away. Same with the County of Tuolumne. The Po Mountain projects and, incidentally, Hidden Valley Lake, their projects still look really strong. We've had a very fruitful engagement with PG&E as they've been developing the rule set around the microgrid incentive program, and we think that this is an extremely good fit, and we're hopeful for it. The short version is that if we get the MIP grants, we have the funding to get through all the risk capital development elements that were holding us back from getting funding when we last saw you a year ago.
All right. Thank you very much for that update. Any comments or questions from board members? So I do have a question. You mentioned the Hidden Valley one, and I was thinking about that. Are we 2 completely parallel tracks, or is there a way for us to capitalize on each other's progress or success, or basically it's a completely different engineering perspective type of thing?
Well, I'll answer this. First off, from an engineering standpoint, they're completely separate. From a bid the projects out standpoint, there probably could be some economies of scale. But for the purposes both of applying for these grants and for the purposes of finding investors, we'll put the investors to the side. For the purpose of applying for the grants, you want them to be separate. In fact, we were working with PG&E up until 10:30 this morning to ensure that PG&E continued to recognize the project that's serving Upper Lake and the project that's serving Hartley as being separate projects, which has been our program design going back to 2021. The reason is that there's a cap on the amount of benefits that any one project can have. So if you're covering the needs of of up to 50 medical baseline customers, you get the maximum number of points. So if you're asking for more dollars but your points are capped, your relative score goes down. And so up through literally 10:30 this morning, we were still nailing that down. And fortunately, our viewpoint was shared by PG&E. So we're continuing to be separate projects. When you go to contract it out to a load-serving entity that will be the off-taker, there's probably more benefit in being separate than there is being together. And the benefit in being separate is that it's a smaller bite. It isn't as much for them to take on. It's 30 megawatts instead of 50 megawatts. There are more potential buyers for 30 than there are for 50. When you go out for finance, there may be some economies of scale between the two in terms of perceived diversification of risk. But if we're getting the MIP grant to cover CEQA and interconnection and geotechnical and hydrologic and all the other risk elements that we're talking about, the risk should be really baked out. As Mr. Rothstein was saying, we see 2 applications happening very soon. So there are going to be the microgrid incentive program applications for a grant, and there's going to be a proposal probably that you would be eligible to turn in to the California Community Power JPA. If you had to choose between the two, you'd take the grant, because part of the deal with CC Power is that they'd be taking on the risk of the last development parts. Do we think that there's a lot of risk there? No, but there's some risk. And so because of that, they're looking for a higher return, which in turn means that the amount that the county would be paid for the lease of its land goes down. If the MIP grants are given, and we can get this so that the risk is baked out, the county stands to make more money off of its lease than it would be if someone else was taking the risk. So if you had to choose between the two, the MIP grants would absolutely be the way to go. However, we don't know for sure. We feel pretty confident actually about the MIP grant application process because of what we see from other projects and the potential scoring. But you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. So we're probably going to be back to see you another time in the next few weeks once the CC Power solicitation comes out, and then there's another one coming behind that from the California Energy Commission for DEBA. But one of the good news about MIP is that they're looking to make a decision by the end of May. And if we have that, then we would be moving to the next phase. And if the grant is proposed to be awarded, the step after that is that there's a review period before the PUC makes a final determination on it. During the pendency of that, Train and the county would start moving towards developing an expanded contract of our own. Right now, we're under the letter of commitment. We would be moving into a contract where you would be receiving $3 or $4 million or whatever that number ends up being after we develop this. You'd be receiving that money from PG&E, and you would be hiring Train to go ahead and do all the development tasks. And we wouldn't be taking all of that grant. Some of that would be remaining with the county to cover your own administrative costs for administering that grant. So once we get notice of it looking like it's going to be awarded at the PUC, we'd want to start working on our own follow-on contract document to develop the project in the next stage. And then it would go through, it would be presumably approved at the PUC, and then the county would be contracting with PG&E to receive those grant dollars. And then once that's in place, we could release the subcontracts to start on the work, and roughly 12 to 18 months later, we could have our studies done, our permits in hand, and investors willing to put money into it.
Okay. And then my last question, I'm never going to forget one of the questions that our colleague asked about whether one of these systems has ever been completely accomplished by you or anyone else, and at this moment in time it's still no. Are we at the same level as any other client of yours that's trying to...
Slightly in front of Hidden Valley Lake.
Okay, but there's no one else who is getting close to finalizing anything at this moment in time?
To be honest, with what we went through last year, a couple of trips to New York. In some ways it was discouraging because the groups that we'd been talking to looked at everything from a due diligence standpoint of, do we trust water going downhill? Is this how much a Pelton wheel turbine costs? How much is this electricity worth? We worked through that with the technical staffs of these organizations, one in particular. And there were no red flags because everybody understood this to be basically a water wheel, right? It's a hydroturbine. People understand it pretty well, as up there at the Lake of Potter Valley. What came back to sort of bite us in that process was that the people who were working on development were not the same people who had the final say on whether or not to pull the trigger on moving forward with a project. And they said, that just looks too different to us. And at that point, we had a choice to go back and start over with the number 2 or number 3 or number 4 ranked organization in that solicitation that we did at the end of 2022. And we went back to them and said, hey, are you really willing to go forward on this? And we asked a sharper question, and we couldn't get any commitments on that. And so what we've done as Train is that we've suspended looking for new sites and investing in new sites until we can get Poe Mountain and Hidden Valley Lake through this next step, this risk capital step, just because it's going to be the same answer that we've received in other places. That doesn't mean that we don't think there are other places that could use it. There are other places that could use it in Lake County and where it probably makes economic sense. There are a lot of community choice aggregators that would love to see projects like this in their territory so that they can take the procurement dollars they have to spend on procuring energy storage and buying something that provides some really important local benefits. But until we can get over that hump of having one make it through CEQA, make it through interconnection, make it through geotechnical and all the rest of the studies, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to start additional projects when you know that they're going to run into the same roadblock eventually.
I appreciate the response. I'm not an engineer, but I believe in the idea and will continue to support it. And I think that we're going to open it up. Supervisor Green.
I'm going to mess this up. For today's item, Lake County is a purchaser, as stated on the contract. We're purchasing basically at no cost if you get the MIP grants, the engineering services you need to do the next phase. Refresh my memory, if you would, very briefly. When this project is built and comes to full fruition, your revenue model involves selling the electricity on the open market, not directly to Lake County, right?
The revenue model is for the investor to have a long-term offtake agreement with a load-serving entity, such as California Community Power, Sonoma Clean Power, Valley Clean Energy, potentially PG&E. But they would have a long-term contract in hand before they finalize their finance and started construction. And so they're selling the electricity and all the other benefits that come from that.
And although the same electricity would be of value to, or at least of interest to a community choice aggregator, we're not in that scenario here in Lake County.
Correct.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Let's go ahead and open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we're going to come back for action.
There's nothing further, Chair. I move to adopt the resolution. I'm sorry, I offer the resolution.
Resolution has been offered.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
And then I will move to approve the agreements for MIP application prep services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
Go out and conquer. Thank you. Okay. So let's see about. Under Sheriff Bingham, would you like to come up and take care of 5.25? Yeah, 5.25. I believe that's what you're here for.
Yes, I am. Thank you, I appreciate it.
And that is approve the contract with Timekeeping Systems, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $25,000, and B, authorize the chairman of the board to sign the agreement.
Yes, this the microphone wire. This is a timekeeping system we use in the correctional facility to track hourly checks of inmates that are required by BSSC and government code. This system is, the old system, there's found some issues with it, and this is an upgraded system to alleviate some of those issues, and then also allows for supervisor audit and checks, and then for deputies to enter in reasons why late checks were done late.
Okay. And I believe there was a dollar amount that was different than the not to exceed $25,000. I believe it was the $49,000 amount.
Yes, originally, so the first year of the contract would be just over $20,000, and that was the request for the board to sign not to exceed $25,000, but over the 5-year contract, it would be under $50,000, I believe $49,000 and some change. We would request that the board authorize the chair to sign for the complete contract over the 5 years for the $49,000, not just the $25,000. We put that in there because that was the first year cost, but then there's a maintenance cost of a little over $6,900 for years 2 through 5.
And just to check in with county council, just changing that $25,000 to $49,781.85 should take care of it and go along with A and then B.
Yes.
Any questions regarding this item? Seeing none, open it up for public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? And seeing none, let's bring it back for action.
Super quick question, I'm sorry. I see a preference, this is for a purchase, not a lease. I don't know if that was a preference of admin or your department. So this is a purchase for the needed devices rather than a lease option?
It's for the software systems, yes, for the system, to change systems, upgrade the system.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Looking for a motion to contract with Timekeeping Systems, Inc. to the amount not to exceed $49,781.85.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Did we mess up somewhere?
Messed up the dollar amount.
Oh, no, that dollar amount's correct. It's just an addition. Board.
Or the chairman for the board to sign?
Correct.
Second,
Or amended?
amended, second as.
And I'll second that amended motion.
Move to amend.
So let's try that again. We have an amended motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr.
I
Guintavana.
move that we, it was.
That was all in one.
All in
That
one.
was swoop.
Got
So
it.
we're done. We're good. Thank you
Okay.
very
All right,
much.
thank you for taking that for me.
Thank you, Under Sheriff.
Let's see here. We're going to go on and take care of some behavioral health stuff. I know behavioral health's been waiting patiently in the room. And so let's start with item 7.6, consideration of A, resolution authorizing Lake County Behavioral Health Services Department to serve as the administrative entity for the Lake County Continuum of Care, and B, memorandum of understanding between Lake County Behavioral Health Services and Lake County Continuum of Care for collaborative applicant and lead agency services. Director Jones, welcome.
Thank you, Board. Elise Jones, Director of Behavioral Health. As stated, this is an item to really formalize the relationship between the Lake County Continuum of Care and behavioral health and make that explicit and give us some basis of authority from the board to act as such, even though we've been doing a lot of work here for the past few years. So happy to answer any questions about these items.
Thank you so much. Any comments or questions? This has been long coming. We've had a very handshake relationship before between the COC and whether it was social services or now behavioral health. This kind of makes a contract of our understanding of where we delineate the responsibilities, and also I think this is exactly what we've been needing. This is a great step, and if there's no further comments, I'll open it up for the public. Any comments from the public? And bringing it back for action.
I just want to add a comment. I also want to thank County Council and Behavioral Health Director Jones for tackling this project. Definitely COC in its early going, there was kind of this, we're all one big happy family, but they are distinct entities, and it's very exciting to see this finally move forward. I see two things. So number one, I will offer the resolution.
Resolution's been offered.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
And then I will move to approve the memorandum of understanding between Lake County Behavioral Health Services and Lake County Continuum of Care for collaborative applicant and lead agency services.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Moving on to item 7.7, consideration of amendment number 2 to the agreement between the County of Lake County Behavioral Health Services as lead administrative entity for the Lake County Continuum of Care, and Adventist Health Clear Lake Hospital, Inc., in the amount of $443,000 for fiscal years 21-24, and authorize the board chair to sign. And I believe we are postponing this item to March 12th.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Is that the correct date of the, okay. And since it's not a public hearing, I'm looking at Mr. Guintavano. I don't believe we need to do a motion to continue this. This can just be replaced on that later agenda. Perfect. Thank you. Moving along, item 7.8, consideration of resolution of the Lake County Board of Supervisors authorizing the Lake County Behavioral Health Services Director to sign the Drug Medi-Cal Organized Delivery System Implementation Plan.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. It's my honor to present this resolution before the board. For some history, this has been really ongoing for the past 2 years. As some of you may be aware, we ran up to the finish line last year with regard to an implementation plan to join the regional model. We decided for a variety of factors to not join the regional model, and so this implementation plan represents our joining in a direct contract with the California Department of Healthcare Services. And I want to explicitly commend Amber Westfall, our Substance Use Disorder Program Manager, who authored the majority of the implementation plan. Of course, it was a team effort, but she was really demonstrated some very sound and good project management skills on that. Following this, we will submit that to the Department of Healthcare Services. At that point, we will have other work to do. We are racing up to a finish line again here of a proposed implementation date of July 1st. I do want to say it is it's not a guarantee. Any number of things can happen, including approvals at the federal level through the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare. They may not like something about it. I don't know, right? So I just want to put that out there, that while we're very hopeful and don't see any roadblocks at this point, it's not over till it's over, but still very strong work, and we're very proud to present that.
And this is related to our, I want to say 1 to 2 years ago conversation about the waiver 1115.
This is the waiver.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments or questions?
Good job. Thank you.
It's definitely been difficult, but it's all about expanding services and greater access, and I think this is the pathway to exactly that. Opening it up for public comment. Please come on up.
Hi. Good afternoon, Board. Lori Carter-Runyon, Executive Director of Hilltop Recovery Services. And I want to thank Elise and the team. I can tell you that, for many of you known, I've been in these rooms quite a few times regarding the ODS waiver, and I was dead set against Lake County Behavioral Health being involved in it. Last year, when we started to address the changes with CalAIM, I was after reviewing and being convinced with enough information to support Lake County Behavioral Health and not joining the waiver with partnership. And I agree that that was the best step, and I fully support Lake County Behavioral Health and our community in addressing this in the way that we're moving forward today. Thank you.
For your comment.
Hi, can you all hear me? Hi, Jolene Treadaway, Chief Clinical Officer for Redwood Community Services. I want to echo the words of Lori. This last year of collaboration with Lake County Behavioral Health has felt like probably our strongest in the almost 15 years I've worked in this county as a partner with Lake County Behavioral Health. And so thank you to Elise, Amber, the rest of the team for that. And we are just really excited for this opportunity to expand the benefits for our community. As the local perinatal perinatal service provider, it's very difficult to offer the continuum of services we're required to offer for the women and children in our facility on the state plan reimbursement. We get about, they want to give us like $100-ish a day to serve a woman and up to 3 of her children, including transportation to medical services, education, and continued therapeutic services while they're in our care, and feeding them. And so we're really excited for the opportunity to see how we can elevate a much-needed service in our community. So thank you all, and thank you, Elise.
Thank you for what you do. Ms. Westfall, no comments? I had to try. Thank you for all your work. Bringing it back to the board for action.
I offer the resolution.
The resolution has been offered.
We're all excited.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye. Thank you very much. All right, we have a couple more. Let's keep going. Consideration of Amendment Number 1 to the agreement between the County of Lake and Community Behavioral Health for specialty mental health services in the amount of $3,200,000 for fiscal years 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26, and authorize the board chair to sign.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I realize that the contract maximum here is shocking, and it's a large amount. I had desired to actually bring this forward with an amendment to reduce another contract we have for these same services. We have previously done a lot of work with North American Mental Health Services, providing all of our telepsychiatry. However, in the past couple of years, I can't remember exactly when, we went out to bid for a new provider because we frankly weren't that satisfied with our existing provider, and that resulted in a new contract with Community Behavioral Health, who incidentally is a local provider out of Reading. We love that. And that relationship has grown. They've been able to meet our demands. For example, providing us with an in-person prescriber. They did that. They're also providing a lot of teletherapy, so not just psychiatry, but teletherapy. That's been a huge, I would say, gap in our services where we didn't have enough therapists to provide services. So they're really helping us meet that need, as well as expanding services. So I anticipate contract maximums to increase generally because of the expanded eligibility criteria introduced by CalAIM on January 1st, 2023. So we're now able to serve more people than ever, including, again, any youth with a history of trauma, period. Like, you don't have to have symptoms. Not that they all need psychiatry, but they're eligible for therapy. They're eligible for these services. And so, due to our workforce issues, we would be not able to provide those services in-house. So therefore, there's an expansion of the work that they've done, and it's reflected in that contract maximum.
Appreciate that. And it's just to make sure people are aware, it's not like it added $3 million in the amendment. It's an extra $600,000 on top of the 2.8 that already 2.4 that already existed, or sorry, 2.6 that already existed. I can't seem to do math. So overall, it's not like it's 100% increase or anything like that, and reimbursements through CalAIM and whatnot.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you for that prompt, Mr. Chair. All of the services are fully reimbursable through Medicare and Medicaid, or Medi-Cal, and our reimbursement rate of Lake County is one of the highest in the state. So these services pay for themselves and then a lot more, actually, and so there isn't any budgetary concerns with regard to the contract.
As long as there's no hiccup anymore in our electronic payment system.
That is, I will report it's not on this item, but it is moving along. There have been some recent fixes. We've seen a lot more money come in, so it's starting. We're actually almost a year in, believe it or not.
And one last thing I will add is I think what's been helpful is the fact that we caught up on all of our reporting or all of our prior numbers that were back like 5, 7 years. The fact that we're up to date now allows us to really expand and look ahead instead of trying to continue to look backwards.
Absolutely.
So appreciate this. Any comments or questions? Supervisor Green.
Yeah, effective date of November 1, 2023, so we're picking up some
Yeah,
past months.
that's correct. So there was a rate change. We negotiated a rate change with them, and that rate change is effective November 1st, which does impact the contract maximum. But in addition, they've just provided more services, period.
Okay, thank you. No further comments or questions. Open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Please.
Hi, Lori Carter-Runyon again, Hilltop Recovery Services. I just wanted to support the situation because we also have been using community behavioral health as one of our primary telehealth providers for mental health services for Hilltop Recovery because we work with Regional Model. We also have contracts with Sonoma County and other areas, and they work well with partnership, but we've also been able to do a lot of important case management, and it's meeting a need that we haven't been able to meet within this county because of access times and needs when we're attempting to get therapists or mental health providers on a timely basis. We weren't able to make that happen previously. So we started with CBH last year as well, and it's been positive and productive and very successful for all of our current residents that receive services. So I just wanted to support that with them, you know. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anything more? And seeing none, let's bring it back to the board for action.
There's nothing else, Chair. I move to approve Amendment Number 1 to the agreement between the County of Lake and Community Behavioral Health for specialty mental health services to increase total compensation by $600,000 and to a new contract maximum of $3,200,000 for fiscal years 2023-24, 2024-25, and 2025-26, and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Last one, consideration of 7.10, consideration of agreement between County of Lake and Adventist Health St. Helena and Vallejo for acute inpatient psychiatric hospital services and professional services associated with acute inpatient psychiatric hospitalization in the amount of $300,000 for fiscal years 23 through 26.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd actually like to push this item to a later agenda as we identified an error within the contract.
Okay. Then we will not need a motion to move that forward, and we'll find it again on a future agenda item. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your patience. I believe that is all of your items off the list. Yes. I want to make sure you're not getting up if I have to call you right back up. Okay, who do we have still? We have Genevieve, we have that, okay. So let's go ahead and do our appointments. We have a couple of them. 7.11, consideration of appointments to the Lake County Building Board of Appeals. And Director Turner, if you'd like to come up, please. Good afternoon.
At a previous board meeting, when we presented a draft of proposed membership for the Building Board of Appeals, the board wanted us to sort of expand the net and start looking at possible options in District 2, as well as other options that were available. So the staff did that. We reached out to the contact you recommended in District 2 a couple times, but didn't get any response. However, it did result in a couple minor adjustments as far as the applications that were received at the clerk of the board's office. And, excuse me. there is a typographical error in that memo, which it's not my fault. Just calling it out for today, but
It's auto
it
text.
says, right, could be, yes, let's call it that. So it says that there are 15 members, but actually there's just 5. I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, though.
I was curious about that one.
Yeah. So there are 5, and we do have 5 applications, and we welcome the board's consideration.
All right, thank you very much for bringing these to us. Any comments or questions about individual applications?
Is there any, does this have to be appointed by a supervisorial district? I know they listed it on the application, but basically this is a countywide thing, right?
The building code does cite areas of expertise that are recommended, because this isn't just like, it's not like an at-large position. We require a certain level of understanding and expertise of the building codes in order to properly consider appeals of building decisions as they come forward. And so these people that are before you do have that expertise.
3 of them just happen to be in District 5.
Well, I guess my question is, if it's a statutory committee, what are the membership requirements by statute?
To the best of my understanding, historically, as I've been with the county, there is not a district ratio or limitation.
There's no pre-existing bylaws that govern this group? No. So it's a fully statutory committee, so it's all based on understanding of building codes,
Correct.
No other criteria?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? All right, let's go ahead and open it up for public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? And hearing none, I am perfectly fine with the list presented and looking
All at
forward.
once or separately?
Since it involves the same committee group, then all of the names can be set at once for appointment on the same, in the same motion.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that we appoint Jeffrey Foster, Autumn Lancaster, Paul Blues, Chief Wrights, and Russ Jonas to the Lake County Building Board of Appeals.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You have a Building Board of Appeals with some good knowledge, and it's not us anymore.
Thank you, and it's been many, many years, yeah, since we've had an outside building board of appeals, so this is exciting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
If you could please remain where you are, we're going to go over the rest of your items. 7.12, consideration of appointment to the Southern Lake County seat of the Cannabis Ordinance Task Force. Director Turner.
Thank you. As this is an appointment from the board, I don't have any recommendations regarding who you do appoint, but I'm here if you have any questions. I can tell you a little bit about Cannabis Ordinance Task Force, but you probably already...
Let's stick to the application.
Go right ahead.
Since that's what's on the agenda. Appreciate the enthusiasm. Any comments about the applications we've received? Supervisor Pyska.
One of them doesn't live in the area.
Yeah, one has been,
So that one's removed.
yeah,
Which one's that?
it's between Monica Rosenthal and John Kelly. Because the other one, I believe, if I looked at it before, it was from Upper Lake.
Upper Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Rosenthal also did submit an application for the next item, the General Plan Advisory Committee.
Okay. And so I did look, I know that we spoke of this when we crafted the original membership of the task force. So I did ask for a current membership list to kind of take a look at who would be a good fit for a balanced approach. And in my opinion, I'd like to maybe see John Kelly being propelled into the position.
I agree. Appointed.
And so I will open it up for the public, because I don't believe I've done that. Any comments? Anyone wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll bring it back for action.
Mr. Chair, I move that we appoint John Kelly to the Cannabis Task Force.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item, 7.13, Clerk of the Board, oops, that's the sponsor. Consideration of appointments to the General Plan Advisory Committee, and Director Turner.
Thank you. This advisory committee will meet about 5 times over the next 3 years to offer advice or input, recommendations to the board regarding the general plan update and all 8 local area plan updates. I was really excited to see a robust response of applications, so I know you guys have a tough decision.
Looks like there's still some seats that we don't have applicants from,
I did not see a response for tribal.
or water.
Well, actually, Robert Stark comes from Water District, though I don't know if he specified that. Oh, is he? Okay. Yeah, and then education, because Ms. Lieferman is also retired from education. Also, cannabis industry was not marked.
Well, starting with, fire district, Chief Duncan, he applied as open.
Gotcha, as member at
And
large.
so I think that it's appropriate to appoint him for the fire. And going down to the homeowners association,
We have Hartley.
well, yes, and we
Marty
have,
Arberg.
did you want me to talk?
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so I recommend Phil Hartley. He is very active in my district with the with Riviera West, but because he works so closely with the other 3 HOAs in the area, Kelseyville, Riviera, Buckingham, and Riviera Heights, I think there's really good synergy there. I'd like to recommend him for that role. And then
I made an error, sorry, when I told you that education was vacant. Marty Araberg also.
Yes,
School board director, yeah.
That's why I was thinking we could have both of them on, since we have 2 applicants for HOAs. And then my suggestion for the environmental group is Roberta Lyons. We have 1 applicant for the seniors, then that would be Betsy. For business association, I'm recommending Weston because he's not only with the KBA, but he sits with our Workforce Alliance Committee. And then Sharon Zoller, I don't think that we could have a better representative there because of her experience sitting as the California president for California Women in Ag. And then I guess we can talk about our district recommendations after, maybe?
I would like to see or discuss at least maybe Donna Makowitz for the environmental group, just because trying to spread it out all around the lake, making sure that there's some equity in disbursement of where these individuals are coming from.
Well, and I was going to pitch Mary Jo for that spot, too, so.
I mean, they're all great potential members.
And so, which one are we talking about here?
The environmental.
Environmental, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 different people, right? Or 5?
Yeah.
We have 5.
Can I ask a quick question before we do the math? This is going to be a Brown Act committee, so these are going to be in-person meetings for the most part, even if some hybrid options are allowed for attendance by members of the public?
I did consult with county council on that issue. This is an advisory committee. It is not Brown Act compliant. The basis for that and support comes from the government code, which excludes advisory committees that have less than a quorum of the legislative body. As this will have 0 members of the legislative body, it qualifies. It is also not a standing committee in that it does not have a permanent duration, nor does it have continuing subject matter jurisdiction. It will be considered, from my understanding, it will be considered as an advisory committee, which would allow people to, or actual voting members to attend remotely.
Okay, so back to the environmental, so we have Donna, who else? Deborah, Katie, Schmidt, Hopper, and Mary Jo and Roberta. Those are the 5 that are applying for that one seat?
Yes, that's what it looks like, at least as their identification.
Okay. And you said you said Roberta, and you said Mary Jo, and you said Donna. And I knew there was 5, so I knew we were going to have to talk about it. I mean, Donna's in my district. You know, I've worked with her on numerous things. I think that I'll just go ahead and say that in my district I have 2 that applied, and I'm going to go with Denise Rushing. And I think that she covers quite a bit of what I think Donna might be concerned about. So, yeah, so I'm open for the environmental group.
Denise? Yeah.
Denise for
That'd be great.
District 3, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
Do you mean District 3 at large or District
large.
3? Okay.
Yeah, it's at large, right?
Oh, do you want Denise for your,
What's the difference? There's 2 spots for that, or?
Yeah, one of them is to focus on environmental, and one of them is to focus on District 3 as far as who they represent.
Oh, that's what I meant. I just want her, she's not environmental. She didn't apply for that position. She applied
who
for.
do you want for environmental?
No, well, what I'm saying is I really kind of feel that she'll kind of cover some of the things I feel that Donna might be concerned about.
You get both. We can have, you get a district at large, and there's an environmental seat.
At large, or is it like my district, is it district-wide? That's the thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's not like an environmental for District 3, because you mentioned District 3, and I was like,
I'm just looking for, as we build, because there's 10 individuals that represent specific topics, and then 5 that represent one for each district. And I'm aiming for those 10 to be as spread out all around the county to provide perspective on the overall general plan.
okay.
My single comment, I think every other person who has submitted for environmental group is absolutely a capable individual to speak for that topic from no matter where they're from. Just, I was looking for some equity in geography.
I see.
Quick process question. Did we limit each applicant to one category that they could apply for? Because that's what I see on the list.
Some of them have multiple. For example, Arenberg has homeowners association, education, and member at large District 1.
It was helpful in the applications that had multiple possible categories, since that gives you additional flexibility.
And so at this moment, 2 would remain vacant until further notice, since there's no one that.
3.
Sorry, I said 2. The tribal membership, the second category, would remain vacant.
Water and cannabis.
Water, I think we said Stark.
No, he's retired.
Oh. And who's the business association? Is there only
Weston.
one? Weston versus Terrell?
What's he applying for?
Weston's my recommendation.
No, Weston is very involved in multiple things, and you mentioned that as well with the Workforce Alliance, and I think he's trying to expand even further than the reach that he has currently, and I think this is a good opportunity. And you said Zoller for traditional or conventional.
Yeah.
Cannabis vacant at this moment in time. And I would suggest that we leave District 1 vacant until Supervisor Simon can make his decision on who that individual is. If that's okay with the rest of the board.
Yes. Yes, and so I guess I didn't finish my environmental, huh? Did I? Did we cover that? Because
We haven't picked.
I've been dancing around on it. Sorry. I guess I'll go ahead and I'll go with your recommendation with Roberta.
Roberta?
Yeah.
And Margot for District 4.
So, yeah, that's the only one I got.
Obviously, District 2 vacant. I'm going to bring an application from Fawn Williams, who's on the Planning Commission for the City of Clear Lake. And I know you mentioned Paul Duncan, instead of being member at large, he's for the fire district.
Yeah.
Who's your member at large?
April.
Oh, Leiferman?
Mhm.
Okay. And then I believe we skipped over senior services. Betsy Kahn, I believe, is the only one that requested that.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And you said for conventional ag, what was your choice?
Sharon?
I had a different choice. Rebecca was my choice, but
I would support that choice as well.
Oh, I'm going to double down on Sharon. So,
you too?
Yeah.
because
Well, you guys are on the ag committee, so
she's a farmer.
I'll go with it. 'Cause
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I yeah.
I love Rebecca, she, and she does speak on behalf of the ag community with the Farm Bureau, but we're looking for somebody that has the farming experience.
Yeah. I'll go with it.
Okay. The rest at this moment would remain blank until further notice, but we have Fire District, Duncan, Homeowners Association, Hartley, Education, Arnberg, Betsy Kahn for Senior Center Services or Senior Support Services, Weston, that's his first name, but Weston for Business Association. Looks like we settled on Zoller for Conventional Agriculture, and then we have the 3 members at large for each one, Rushing, Kambara, and Leiferman.
What about District 2?
District 2, again, I need to get you an application for Fawn Williams. But at this moment in time, I can't approve what hasn't been applied for.
So if the board likes, we can, we'll bring the remaining vacancies back at a future board meeting.
And I would suggest it can be like any other committee applications that we receive, so it doesn't have to be its own separate. I don't know if that's a better way to go or not.
Separate what?
Right.
Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah.
And I just want to thank everybody for applying. This is such a big project, and we can't do this without the community's input, and all of these people have offered up a significant amount of time. So whether or not they were selected, I just really thank them for applying and being committed to our communities.
So with the list I just provided, let's go ahead and open that up for public comment to get any public input. Seeing none, we'll bring it back.
I just want to say that for the folks that are, applying in my district and throughout the whole county for this, I appreciate you applying, and I apologize to the folks that were in my district that wanted to apply as well and didn't get chosen. It was very hard for me to make these decisions. As you see, I danced around quite a bit, but lots of hard choices and lots of good choices to pass up. So.
And I'll just add, for those people who didn't get chosen, you're welcome. We're going to give you lots of available time. You'll still be able to provide input during any number of public scoping sessions and area plans. But we're just putting the voting members on there that are going to take votes up and down on certain advisory things they bring to the board. So nobody's going to get left out in this. Just some people will get a seat, and some people will be standing up at the microphone or zooming in, it sounds like. So
I will make one last argument. As I'm going through this, this is very heavy on District 5, and just think that Rebecca Harper, I believe, lives in Upper Lake, if I'm correct.
No, I think she lives in Lucerne.
Or Lucerne.
Or Conate or something like that.
I was close.
Mm.
Missed it, but I was close. And I just think that, again, getting that perspective from multiple communities, I mean, we have Duncan, Hartley, Weston, Zoller, and the District 5 representative. When there's 10 other representatives for these topics, and 1, 2, 3, 4 out of the 10 are from District 5, it just seems very centered around one specific perspective and need of a community. And I want to make sure that this general plan really looks at the needs of all of the communities all around the county. And I think that it's a mistake to have so many of one when there are some good applicants from other topics around the county in different districts. And I believe that right now you only have 2, I believe.
4. What do you mean 2?
As far as who was chosen?
Yeah, Betsy and, yeah.
Well, why don't you, there's a lot of the environmental applicants, but I feel very strongly that Sharon should be our ag rep.
Well, then I'm willing to go with Donna.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and before you do that,
Unless
I would
you
just
wanna
throw
go.
in, I appreciate the concern, but that's something we addressed during, you know, we have 5 at-larges that basically they're doing the heavy lifting on geographic, and then we dived in on all these special niches that we wanted to give input as well. So even if some of these other categories do end up focused in a particular district, we're not asking them to chime in on District 5 stuff. We're asking them to provide their expertise within the category that we so carefully crafted this advisory committee to do. So that's not to say they can't do both. They can, you know, advocate for regional concerns on top of the niche that they were appointed to this for. But if we're going to be taking a look at are they going to fairly represent this or that district, then the only people we should really be applying that metric to is our at-larges. And I'm triple downing on Sharon Zoller. Thank you.
Donna?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I was fine with it earlier, but I just, you know, you said someone else too, though, I thought.
Mary Jo.
Mary Jo. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'll go with that.
Donna?
Yeah.
Okay.
I sure wish there was more District 2 people to apply so that Bruno wouldn't have to.
I'm not at all worried about that because
Yeah.
the majority of it is right within the city of Clear Lake, and so they need to focus on Clear Lake's general plan. But we'll get an applicant, so at least I have my at-large. I'm definitely looking, and I have the smallest geographic district. You have
Right.
the largest, and so
Right.
that's where I'm trying to balance that out.
Thank you for that. I considered it, and I'm fine with the Donna, but I was fine either way. Yeah.
So who wants to provide a motion to approve?
You have the list. I'll do a so moved all day long after you read your list.
I would appreciate just a little clarification on who has got consensus for environmental group.
Environmental would be Donna Makowitz.
Okay, because I had 2 for Roberta, 1 for Donna, 1 Mary Jo. Denise no, she's not there. Okay, so are we settled then on?
Donna.
Donna, great, thank you.
Okay, so we have, do you need me to go over the list?
Would you mind, I can read you the list that I have and let me know if you agree.
Perfect.
All right. Fire District, Paul Duncan. Homeowners, we're skipping tribal, bring that back. Homeowners Association, Phil Hartley. Education, Marty Araberg. Water District remains vacant. Environmental Group, Donna Makowitz. Senior Support Services, Betsy Kahn. Business Association, Western Seaford. Conventional Agriculture, Sharon Zoller. Cannabis Industry, vacant at this time. Districts 3, 4, and 5 are, I just stuck it all together. Denise Rushing, Margot Kambara,
April Leiferman.
and April Leiferman.
Lieferman.
And with that, I move to appoint the qualified applicants as just ably listed by Director Turner to the General Plan Advisory Committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Gives you a great start, and we're done with those items. So let's go ahead and start with 7.4. Is staff ready for 7.4, CAO Parker?
Give me 1 minute. She's probably on her way.
Well, meanwhile, we'll go ahead and pick up 7.2, consideration of letter of support for Clear Lake's grant application for the Dam Road roundabout. This is a project that the APC has provided support for, but still looking for some funding, hence why the sponsorship from Supervisor Simon and myself coming from the APC. The letter of support speaks for itself. The roundabout would be right where the Dam Road and Dam Road extension, right at the corner of where Jack in the Box, Starbucks, and McDonald's is where the roundabout would be, and open for any questions or comments from the board.
This was at a, you guys talked about this at an APC meeting, you said?
Yes.
All right. That was, just that's all I had really to ask about.
Seeing no other comments or questions, open it up for the public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? And seeing none, bringing it back to the board for action.
Move to approve the letter of support for Clear Lake's grant application for the Dam Road roundabout and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And item 7.4, consideration of resolution amending resolution number 2023-117, establishing position allocations for fiscal year 23-24, budget unit number 2111, Public Defender, and establishing the Deputy Public Defender 123 Senior and Public Defender 12 as county classification.
Good afternoon, Pam Samak, Director of Human Resources. So today we are putting forth the resolution for the Chief Public Defender. The only sidebar on this is that the Public Defender Investigator is still under consideration with LCEA for adding them to that unit. They expect to be voting on that like yesterday. So once I hear from that, we can finalize that, but they didn't really think it would be a problem. It just has to go before their governance board.
So this would be a tentative agreement that we would provide with a conditional that they have to approve this as well?
Correct.
Any comments or questions regarding this item from the board? Supervisor Green?
Did we bench these, I assume?
We did bench them, but since we're in the process of doing a compensation study, we're using our previous data. And we agreed to have parity with the district attorney's unit, so we're going to leave it at the same grade as the district attorney until we move forward in the next step of our comp study.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question and that answer. Anything further from the board? Your pen is capped. Open it up for public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Seeing none, bringing it back to the board for action.
I'll offer the resolution.
Resolution's been offered.
All right. Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye. All right, 7.5, consideration, let me continue with, let me continue with human resources while you're right there. Just got to skip a little bit further ahead. 7.15, consideration of updated Rule 1503 sick leave policy. Ms. Hammack.
Sorry, I've got a couple of different sheets here. So we are updating our sick leave policy in conjunction with new regulations effective January 1st, which basically states that our extra help need to go from the 3 days we were previously providing to 5 days. And that's the basic overall change. All of our other positions exceed the regulation. So, and this is to comply with California Healthy Workplace update effective January 1st.
Thank you very much. Any comments, questions? Okay, opening it up for public. Any comments or questions? So I'll bring it back to the board. My only, I guess, quick question is the obvious answer, but since we were already above the amount, the impact to our budget is negligible at this point in time.
Correct.
Okay. I think the only impact would probably be the extra help, which is minimal again.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Looking for action.
I move to approve the updated sick leave policy rule 1503.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. 7.16, consideration of Rule 1513, reproductive loss leave policy. Ms. Samick.
So this is to meet new law effective January 1st, which is allowing up to 5 days per occurrence, 20 days per year for reproductive loss.
Unpaid?
Unpaid, yes.
Any comments or questions? Open it up for public. Anyone wish to speak on this item? Bring it back for that action from the board.
I move that we approve 1513, policy 1513, reproductive loss leave.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to 7.17, consideration of updated hiring incentive policy. Ms. Samick.
So staff submits to your board a couple of minor changes to our incentive policy. The first is to allow the department head to request of the CAO and the Director of Human Resources the ability to request an incentive without meeting the hard-to-fill criteria, so meaning that they wouldn't have to have 2 failed recruitments or less than 3 qualified applicants. And as we have some hard-to-fill positions coming up, we're working on several right now with the Water Resource Director and the Public Services Director. We would like to be able to have the ability for historically hard-to-fill positions to add that in without meeting that criteria. And then we would like to make a few other changes to change newly appointed employee to applicant having not been employed in the last 18 months. Sometimes employees do leave and they're great employees, but if they're in a hard-to-fill position, right now it's newly appointed, so if they've ever been employed by the county, we can't give them that incentive. And this could make the difference in bringing a really qualified individual back to us. The second is to change to remove the section of saying successful completion of probationary period to just completion of your first year. That kind of goes without saying that if you've met your first year and you're still here, you've successfully met the probationary period. We would also like to change the repayment requirement to being paid back on a prorated basis. So if somebody makes it 18 months, it doesn't make sense to charge them for the full amount. Also, it makes it very difficult for the auditor's office to collect the full amount. And we think that will give us more flexibility, and it'll also make it easier to collect the incentive back should somebody leave less than the 2 years. Lastly, we'd like to add the public defender and the eligibility worker to the hard-to-fill list. Since the attorneys are traditionally hard to hire, and the employment and eligibility worker is right now a hard-to-fill position, and Social Services has asked us to add that. The Class and Comp Committee met and agreed to that condition. Any questions?
Are there any comments or questions from the board? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, just a couple typographical things really on page 2 under the hiring for non-safety positions. There's some red line through, it says completion of the first year and then of employment. Just for consistency, that strike through text should be retained to be consistent with all the other similar phrases throughout the document that all reference completion of the first year of employment. So that would be for consistency. And then second, just a personal preference, when you put the trailing 00 for the cents in those dollar amounts, it just adds some visual clutter. So I think $10,000 period without the trailing zeros would be appropriate. But that's just an old editor talking.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? So I will say that I feel unable to speak on this item. I would like to have a discussion on what is in the item, but basically the way the memo writes, you've already met with the unions. You're coming back to us to see what we say, and then you're going to go back to the unions. And to me, that is a very similar negotiating type of atmosphere and exercise. And I don't feel I have the ability to negotiate in public by saying I don't agree with specifics within the context of the policy. And so my personal opinion is I want to see this in closed session so we can have a negotiating discussion so that we're not putting it out in the public for the unions to hear us as to what we want to do. So I'm not going to provide any specifics of what I might want to see added or might want to see deleted. I also feel that this should not be continued to be approved without seeing the financial ramifications. What is this costing us to do these hiring incentives? So I'm going to leave it at that, but I feel the need to go into closed session in order to discuss this. But at this moment in time, that will be up to my colleagues to say yes or continue moving forward.
And we met with the unions when this was first implemented several years ago. So we haven't met with them the second time with these revisions. That would be after receiving board input. And I did take a look, and I can tell you, in 2021, we spent $119,000 on incentives. 2022, we spent $263,000. In 2023, we spent $125,000. I can send you our spreadsheet. I did need to get input from the auditor's office to what was unpaid and uncollected, because that's in their ballpark. So they'll get me a report. I can certainly send that to the board, but that's the basic cost over the last 3 years.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing those numbers. You and I had a discussion about that prior to that. But I still feel trapped at this moment in time to have a full-blown discussion, just because at that point it's like negotiating for a property with everybody in the same room and trying to keep our cards at bay. So just my opinion. Any other comments from board members before I open it up for the public? Supervisor Green?
Well, and then going again to the top of page 2 of the red line. So I guess your discomfort would extend to the role of the Class and Comp Committee, because, for example, one of the changes proposed here did just go through Class and Comp to add the training and eligibility workers to the list. So, and I kind of struggled with that particular Class and Comp meeting myself for other reasons. But your point is taken, but if I'm to follow the specific question of reviewing the hard-to-fill eligible positions, Class and Comp did meet, and it did recommend adding the training and eligibility workers to this list. So I don't know which procedure I'm supposed to follow right there, unless everything that goes through class and comp would immediately go into closed session after that. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm just saying it's a question. So that's that.
Well, I wasn't sure if it was mid-year or in September when we discussed the incentives in the context of the budget, but I know we did recently. Do you remember? Stephen?
Come forward, please.
Mr. Carter.
Stephen Carter, Assistant County Administrative Officer. Put it up a little bit. So that is something that would generally be spoken of during any of the budget hearings we want, but specifically in June because it's for the upcoming year. Like within the cannabis budget unit, there's so much set aside to go to the budget unit, different budget units, just for this. And we do budget for about $125,000 to $150,000 a year to transfer over. So what specifically would you like to know?
I was just trying to recall when exactly we had that conversation, but I feel like it was somewhat recently. Did you touch on it during mid-year budget, or was it in September?
I don't believe Casey did during mid-year.
Okay.
It would have been September.
It's September.
But we definitely would talk about it in June.
Right.
Because it'd be for July 1 going forward.
Well, there is something on here I would like to discuss in closed session. So I do agree with that.
I'm fine with approving it.
Okay, it looks like there's a consensus to take this to closed session for further deliberation in order to have a open conversation regarding the details within the document. I will open it up for public since this is on the agenda at this moment in time. I see Kyle Bill has his hand up. Hopefully I didn't miss your hand from previously. Hopefully this is for this item.
Yeah, no, this is for this item. I just want to provide feedback for, as you know, someone that in the county is just looking at. I know some of the removing some of the barriers that exist to this is, you know, in theory it sounds good, but I think it just kind of can create a revolving door for people to take advantage of these changes. And oftentimes I would assume just by guessing is that these oftentimes positions that are deemed, you know, harder to fill are more of the upper management and higher paid positions. And so it kind of leans a little bit more in favor of people that are in those positions and not necessarily those that are equally as important, you know, but are easier to fill, like, you know, your janitors and your, you know, receptionists, those types of positions, those entry, you know. So I just say just to be cautious of, like, make sure there's still some type of checks and balances to make sure that they're not being, you know, taken advantage of, and understanding the fiscal impacts that it would be. So I just wanted to share that, you know, just to be cautious, because it does seem like removing a lot of things, it does sound good. But also in the last item that we talked about, you know, women that are having miscarriages are expected to take that leave without pay. And, you know, what is the fiscal impact of paying those women compared to, you know, this investment in trying to recruit people? I think it's just kind of looking at it from a broader sense is recruitment, that is important, but also looking at what was just passed at the last item where we're expecting women that have gone through miscarriage to do that without getting paid. So looking at both of those things to consider, I would just like to express that.
Thank you very much for your comments. I'll comment on that comment. I don't disagree that some of this is definitely more leaning towards the higher levels of possibly administration, but at the same time, we do have some positions that are not on the highest paid list at all. I'm not going to mention some because I don't want to make it sound demeaning, but I think it covers the spectrum, but we struggle the most when it comes to specific positions, but appreciate the comment and absolutely noted. Any other public comment? please come on up to the microphone.
So I understand you'll discuss more in closed session, it sounds like. So I don't know if I'll be a part of the discussion, so I just wanted to point out that at the 1-year mark, I would suggest that if the employee is, well, when we're deciding to give the second installment of the bonus, if there's any disciplinary action going on at that time, I think it would be accepted that the language would allow us to not give the second installment of the bonus until the department has given the merit or they've completed whatever process that they're in, so that we're not giving somebody a bonus if there are disciplinary issues. So I just wanted to mention that because some of that language is being addressed in the way, the update that's in front of you right now. So
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
I will not comment on that in order to keep it for closed session. Anyone else wish to speak on this topic? Seeing none, bring it back to the board, and we have consensus to bring this to closed session. Do you know if that will be in our next upcoming meeting in order to get this accomplished as quickly as possible, or if it'll take a couple of weeks?
It'll either be the 5th or 12th.
Okay.
It'll either be the 5th or 12th.
All right. Anything further from the board before we move on? All right, Ms. Samick, thank you very much, and we'll be seeing each other again. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and do item 7.3, consideration of a letter of support for California Coastal Conservancy LIDAR derivatives funding. Did you want to start off and speak on that? Okay. Mr. Rothstein.
So good afternoon again, Supervisors. Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer. As you'll be aware, the United States Geological Survey, USGS, and California Department of Conservation recently funded collection of LIDAR data throughout Lake County. And initial LIDAR collection is complete, and data is being refined over the course of 2024. In order for the data to be most usable for natural resource and fuels management and other purposes, LIDAR derivatives additionally need to be developed. These are data layers that provide information such as canopy height, cover and bulk density, information on ladder fuels, and historical data on past ignitions, as well as overlaying data on the probability of extreme fire weather in the area, for example. You may recall that the county has included LIDAR derivatives in multiple recent grant applications approved by your board. This priority was included in Lake County Resource Conservation District-led CAL FIRE grant applications approved by your board February 28, 2023 and January 9, 2024. On Thursday, February 22, 2024, we were made aware the California Coastal Conservancy is considering funding a LIDAR derivative development project encompassing a larger area in collaboration with at least the North Coast Resource Partnership, NCRP, and Coastal San Luis Resource Conservation District. Fortunately, the Coastal Conservancy expressed interest in funding LIDAR derivatives in Lake County in connection to that broader effort, and staff was able to confirm that no matching funds are required. So all of that was truly outstanding news. Tuckman Geospatial is a contractor that we've worked with to develop information for grant applications in the past. They were the ones putting together the proposal for the Coastal Conservancy and had a need to turn around their detailed proposal by end of day Friday, February 23, 2024, and they indicated a need for a letter of support from Lake County to be included with their proposal. And given that this was an established county priority and the quick turnaround required, Supervisor Pyska provided a letter of support on her letterhead to support Lake County's inclusion in the proposal. And today's action is asking your board to ratify Supervisor Pyska's letter, and staff recommends that you ratify the letter. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for the presentation. Any comments or questions?
I'll just thank you to staff for moving so quickly on this. This is a really big priority. We're halfway through the project. It's already been funded, the collection and the derivatives. Obviously, this is our third attempt to try and get this funding, so we cannot let an opportunity slip past us. So it's not an ideal timeline, but it is what it is, and we acted in the way that we felt most appropriate to make sure that we could be considered for this opportunity. So I am asking that the board ratify this letter today.
Okay. Any further comments or questions from the board? So I will make a statement that I think we need to be careful in how we speak for the board when the board has not taken action. This will be the third time that I've seen this occur. The last one was with the CSA, number 2, where there was a timeline issue and a board support letter was provided. And granted, obviously, yes, we want to support, but none of us here in this room individually can speak for the board without approval from the board, or at least speak in support of something that the board has not provided yet. This was different. Yes, it supports LiDAR, but I think that you attempted, and I don't think you were completely successful. Yes, it was on your letterhead, but you used the term "we," and you said Lake County would be happy to join, and I don't believe any of us get to speak in that way about Lake County without coming to us first. The previous one, again, was the CSA, and then the previous one before that was the BGN. And so I just want to make that statement that we need to be careful, and if timelines are short, we have the ability to get 2 supervisors to sign a letter and provide that letter of support, but we do not get to write as if we are already getting that approval from the board. This letter, I will provide my support because now that it's in front of us, yes, I will support that. I would like to see it changed with the all 5 names because right now it just has your name. But I just think we need to recognize our limitations of power as board individuals. I went over the policies and procedures for the Board of Supervisors, and this ability does not exist for us to take even if we bring it back to the board for ratification. And it's just an open can of worms, because if somebody brings us something that we don't like, then what do we do if it's already sent out? And so I want to make sure that we always come back to the board. Yes, we've had issues with the number of meetings in this past 2 months. It's been really hectic, hence why we have such a large agenda. But I don't believe that timeliness should ever bypass the board as a whole, and that we need to figure out what other avenues are available to us. And so I'll leave it at that.
And I'll just add that the board has already approved this type of funding, although different sources, twice before.
And I think that we do that regularly and still have to come back to the board for approval when things change. Just because we support a telepsychiatric ability for behavioral health, once we go to a different agency to create a different agreement, that we have to go through that process. This is a different agreement, therefore a new agreement that we'd have to go through.
Okay, so sorry, we used the word "we." I should have had the word "I," and staff and I won't make that mistake again. But again, this is the 3rd request for funding.
What are we talking about here? We're talking about this letter, or?
Yeah. No, I was just saying this is not the...
referring to other.
This is not the first time I've had conversations with our CAO, and at the end here it says, "We are aware the Coastal Service is considering funding a suite of LiDAR derivatives for a larger territory, and Lake County would be very excited." And I just think that it could have been reworded so that it was specific from the Board of Supervisors, not the board, because, again, we are not eligible to speak for the board without the prior approval or discussion of the board to know exactly where we stand on the specifics.
Okay, and then you mentioned other letters.
Yes,
And you said one, I heard BGN, but then you said another one.
Yeah, the CSA number 2 that we had, I believe it was either December that we ratified a letter of support that was provided by the chair, and then came to us like the week later or something like that for us to ratify. And again, I think that there's avenues to make that letter of support with 2, but you don't get to speak for the board.
Okay. I suppose. That's a surprise to me, but.
For everything.
I'm not certain how, okay. I said my statement. But again, happy to support this. I would love to see the change, though, with the header to have all 5 of our names on there, if approved, so that we can show the full board support as well.
Well, again, thank you for notifying me of this, and we'll make sure anything that's done that way, we'll keep it to that spectrum. Also would appreciate that in the public, when statements are made on behalf of the board in verbal form, you know, it's kept with the same thought process as well.
Okay. Any further comments? Supervisor Green.
Thank you. This is confusing to me. You know, when we were, you know, normally when we do letters of support, they come, the full board listens, we take a vote, and the letter of support is sent off with the chair's signature. This letter did not follow that pattern. I guess there may have been other letters too. So in the absence of there's no clear protocol. It sounds like there's some oral history, or at least some understandings that letters of support can go out in various iterations. But I couldn't find anything in the board procedures or protocols that really address letters of support generally. But even if there was, the idea that you could go ahead and fire off a letter on short notice and then bring it to the board for ratification, you know, I can't ratify something that's already been sent off with any confidence. And specifically, even if the board has previously supported prior grant applications, I really, you know, I got a little background information on this, but I still don't know what this letter of support is supporting. So I'm uncomfortable. You know, I want to offer all my colleagues all due flexibility in wheeling and dealing with government agencies, but if there was some deadline that crept up on us, either our inattention to that or the lack of 2 meetings prior to that handicapped our ability to timely bring a letter of support that the full board can consider, I don't know that there's a sense of urgency in my mind that this letter needed to get sent. You know, I'm not sure whatever was already in process could have continued without this county chiming in in support of that, you know, and maybe that's just my own discomfort with letters of support and generally. We treat them like baseball cards. They're like these treasured little pieces of paper that we trade back and forth between agencies. So maybe this just seemed like another letter of support going out. And maybe my colleagues will totally ratify this today, but I'm not aware of a policy or procedure that allows me to ratify a letter that's already been sent out. I do see a procedure to ratify an emergency declaration that the sheriff and OES has put out, but I don't even know what I'm supporting or opposing here, but I guess I oppose the idea that we're ratifying a letter after it's been sent.
Any further comments, Supervisor Pyska?
Well, I'll just remind you that we sent a letter of support and we approved a grant in December for this exact project, just a different funding stream. And we were alerted to this funding opportunity on Thursday, and the letter was due Friday. So there was no other time to bring this to a meeting. That was it. And this is a partnership. You know, one of our frustrations for a lot of our projects, particularly with LIDAR and with our other fuels projects, is that we're not part of other partnerships. And we try and we try and we try to be part of these regional partnerships, and we're continually excluded. And so, yes, this is probably an afterthought. Maybe because Lake County is always complaining that we're not included in partnerships, we should offer this opportunity, and it's probably at the last minute. And that's likely what happened, because we're not part of the Coastal Partnership. We're not part of the North Coast Regional Partnership. We keep banging on their door and asking to be part of it. And so that's likely why we were an afterthought for this and why we weren't prepared in advance to have a better opportunity to come to the board. So we made the decision, I made the decision, staff supported me on this, and this is critical funding. This is a project that we've been working on, I've been working on for 3 years? 3 years. We've already had the data collection. That was a $500,000 project from USGS and the Department of Conservation. And all of that is useless without the derivatives. That's why this is such an important project. And I know you never supported this in the beginning, and that's fine. But this is critical data for our county. And so, I wrote the letter, we wrote the letter, and if there's issues with it and I use the word we, then I apologize for that, and I will never do that again. And it will come straight from me. But I'm not going to apologize for sending this letter in because it's so critical for us moving forward.
If we previously approved a letter of support for a different funding stream, I guess,
Yes.
but you found out about this other funding stream on Thursday?
Yes. We've already been unsuccessful, as Matthew had said. We wrote in a grant, in a CAL FIRE grant last winter, unsuccessful. We put it in another CAL FIRE grant in December. We don't know if that's going to happen. Can we risk, given the deficit and given how much lower the CAL FIRE grants are now, we can't risk losing this opportunity, especially, this is the best opportunity we actually have because the Coastal Conservancy is funding this for the entire North Coast when they did the LiDAR flyover. So we are actually being lumped into their project, which is what we asked for 3 years ago.
Well, if it's that urgent, and you found out about it Thursday, then the process might have been, rather than just fire off the letter and try to get backdated ratification, maybe this is an urgent item that could have been added to the agenda after it was posted, if it was that urgent. I don't know if it would have met those findings of like public
No, it
health
was
safety.
due on Friday. It was added to the agenda. It's here on the agenda.
She made it on the agenda in time. So there's no need for an extra item or urgent.
It just was due on Friday. Matthew called me about 1 o'clock on Thursday.
Are there any further comments? All right, open it up for the public. Any questions or comments from the public? Kyle, Bill, please.
Yeah, I think maybe looking at a process where, because we know in the grant sector, the timelines can often be short when you find out funding opportunities or things, and you don't definitely want to miss out on an opportunity to, support something that's important to the community. So I think maybe even outlining a process where each supervisor might have the ability to, draft something that can be in support of, so that it's at least helps application look a little bit stronger and better when it does come time to be considered, but also just looking at obviously not making it a habit of, not making, getting things on the agenda that are upcoming, but also knowing that, I myself working in the nonprofit sector know how quickly grants can, pop up in your mailbox or, be notified. And so the timely response is sometimes very short. So looking at how do we, help navigate those shorter timelines that are transparent with everybody, with the community and what's going on, but also not, it's a delicate dance that has to be sometimes have to be done. But so how to navigate it in a way where there's more transparency, inclusion with all the supervisors, but also not, allowing precious funding that is already very competitive being missed for the county as well.
Thank you for your comments. Any further public comments? Seeing none, bringing it back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I think we had the CAO had something.
Oh, CAO Parker.
Yes, I just wanted
hear the flick of the button.
That's all right. I just wanted to add that we have currently already started drafting a process to be placed in your protocols regarding letters, U.S. trust requests, and there's one more and I can't remember it. But these are things that your protocols are silent on, just for clarification, and we'll bring it back to the board for your final, blessing to be added to the protocols, just so we avoid any misunderstanding.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Looking for action on this item?
Mr. Chair, I move that we ratify a letter of support for California Coastal Conservancy LiDAR derivatives funding.
Are we amending the letter with the name changes?
As amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
Okay. And that was not on my yet, so we're good. Let's move on to 7.5. Keep going down the list. Consideration of a letter asking the California Public Utilities Commission to reject AT&T California's request to be relieved of carrier of last resort obligations. Mr. Rothstein?
Yes. Again, good afternoon, Board. Matthew Rothstein, Chief Deputy County Administrative Officer. As you will be aware, in connection to the California Public Utilities Commission's proceeding A23-03-003, AT&T California is requesting approval to be relieved of its carrier of last resort obligations in many areas of California, including much of Lake County. The letter attached to your board's agenda documents significant concerns that would arise were this application approved. Members of your board will be aware California lacks a uniform and technology-neutral minimum quality standards for telecommunications providers. Mobile technologies and voice over IP, for example, aren't subject to the same standards as traditional telecommunications services. Supervisor Pyska, for example, provided testimony before the CPUC in September of 2023 on the vulnerabilities that this creates, particularly in times of disaster. Severe winter storms of recent years have brought into relief the diversity of situations where mobile technologies may not sufficiently replace traditional services, and AT&T's own mobile services have been among those recently disrupted. Plain old telephone service, POTS, remains a critical backstop when lesser regulated technologies provide inadequate service. And maintaining carrier of last resort obligations where no clearly sufficient alternative is available is essential to promoting public safety and maximizing continuity of service. And in response to feedback from members of your board, I also have a couple of proposed additions to the letters. John, are you able to display that? And if you can scroll to page 2. So, on page 2 of the letter, added language is AT&T's own mobile service has experienced recent disruptions, bringing the ongoing need of plain old telephone service into renewed focus. And then toward the bottom of the letter, page 3. The new language reads, affected areas of Lake County encompass portions of the cities of Lakeport and Clear Lake, and current land holdings and lands historically associated with Lake County's 7 sovereign tribal nations, in addition to unincorporated areas of our county. Approving this request would have widespread consequences, particularly for residents of less population-dense communities. And staff recommends that your board approve this letter as amended and authorize the chair to sign.
Thank you very much for that. Any comments or questions regarding this letter? Appreciate the amendments that were made to that, especially since some of it is so recently learned and experienced. Let's open it up for public comment.
Well, I would say it's ongoing. It's not so recent.
True. Kyle Bill.
Sorry, I forgot to lower my hand for the last item.
I thought you had another comment for us.
But I mean, I think, having more access, I know some of the elderly still rely on a lot of, not necessarily just the cell phones. I know my grandmother still has a landline. There's they find more security in knowing that they have a landline, I think. So also just the access. Sometimes a lot of rural communities don't have access to cell phones, and the reliability. There's, again, thinking about the emergencies. If a cell phone tower goes out, that's a critical way that we can't always just put all our hopes and safety into one device that can cause be faulty at times too. So I would just say, keeping it broader, more options better. Same with AM FM radios. Even though we are living in a digital age, we still do rely on more older technology that is sometimes more reliable in especially emergency situations.
Thank you for your comment. Anything further from the public? Seeing none, bringing it back to the board for action.
I move that we approve the letter asking the California Public Utilities Commission to reject AT&T California's request to be relieved of carrier of last resort obligations and authorize the chair to sign.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, as amended?
As amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that. Let's continue with admin. Adopt
Can we
resolution.
take a break?
Oh, yes. Let's go ahead and take a 12-minute break. We'll be back at 3:30. And welcome back. We're going to take up item 5.4, adopt a resolution to establish Fund 427 Kelseyville Seniors, Inc., KSI Trust. And with us, we have Mr. Carter, I believe, not starting with CAO Parker. Mr. Carter, please.
Well, since it was pulled,
Instead of introducing the item, let me introduce the potential change that I would like to look at. So I did have a conversation with our county council, and in the last two whereases, it says, whereas funds from the trust are to be used solely for senior center related costs, and whereas funds are to be held in accounts managed by the administration office to ensure proper tracking and fiscal compliance on behalf of KSI. My conversation with county council was that I felt it needed to be below the now therefore be it resolved, so it was more of an action than just a passive comment or statement. And the response that I received was it would be favorable to move it down to the now therefore be it resolved. Okay. And so I wanted to pull it and offer that suggestion of, because a whereas is a recital of, from my conversation, interpretation and introduction, but it's not a mandate, it's not a
binding.
It's not binding. Here, if we move it down to below, now therefore be it resolved, it would be binding, that that is the expected action of the board. And wanted to see how the board felt about that change. I don't feel it changes anything of what our intentions are, other than it moves things around on the document to, again, make this binding. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Mr. Carter?
I will say agree, but since it's not, since you pulled it, I did want to speak about it a little bit.
Please.
So when your board approved the purchase and the purchase agreement and the lease, this is the next step in the process where fund number 427 is now being created via this resolution. I know your board understands this is more for the public. Fund number 427, Kelseyville Seniors, Inc. is being created in the greater county structure, but this is Kelseyville Senior, Inc.'s proceeds from the sale. I just wanted to put that out there and to reiterate the two whereases. Funds from the trust are to be used solely for senior center related costs, and those, the senior center will provide invoices to the administration office, who will vet that it is a senior center activity and then submit it to the auditor's office for payment. So there is going to be a double check to make sure that it's senior center services and not any other type of expense. And I think I just wanted, those are the couple things I wanted to make sure were publicly known.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, any comments or questions regarding this? Opening it up for the public. Anyone from the public wish to speak on this? And seeing none, bringing it back to the board for action.
Offer the resolution.
It's,
If we can go ahead and retract that and make sure that it's offered by the individual from that district.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt the resolution to establish Fund 427 Kelseyville Seniors, Inc., KSI Trust.
With the amendments or no?
With the amendments.
Okay. The resolution has been offered.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Thank you, and I'll work on getting signatures.
Okay. We're going to move on to item 5.15, ratify Year 2, 2024 compensation adjustment for the agreement for medical services in Lake County Detention Facility with California Forensic Medical Group, CFMG. And the reason for pulling this item on the underneath the header of contract Year 2 annual compensation adjustment. Year 2 of the initial term of our agreement will begin January 1st, 2023. That needs to be corrected to 2024. I was hoping we can do that without pulling it from consent, but this is the easier and cleaner way since dates are of substance. And that is my only request to change. We do have somebody from Health Services in case they wanted to speak on this item. The answer is no. Thought I'd put you on the spot. And so any further comments or questions regarding this item? If not, open it up for public. Any questions or comments on this item? And bringing it back to the board for action. We're on 5:15.
Move we ratify Year 2 2024 compensation amendment for the Agreement of Medical Services in Lake County Detention Facility as amended to put the correct date.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have two more and then calendars. This is our treasurer tax collector who has been absolutely patient. 7.20, consideration of resolution authorizing the chair of the board to approve and direct the tax collector to sell or at public auction via internet tax defaulted property, which is subject to the power to sell in accordance with Chapter 7 of Part 6 of Division 1 of the California Revenue and Taxation Code, and approving sales below minimum price in specified cases. Mr. Sullivan.
Good afternoon. Patrick Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. Thank you again for the opportunity to bring this forward to your board today. As you already stated, this is the authorizing resolution for the Chapter 7 sale. There's 944 properties at this point that are slated for the auction. Just to give a little background on what these are, this represents the remaining inventory of properties within the county that are over $5,000 in value and have not been offered in the last 6 years. It also is the remainder of what has not been offered in the city of Clear Lake, regardless of the value. So this is basically getting through the last of the unauctioned properties or properties we haven't attempted to recently auction in city of Clear Lake, and as well those properties around the county that are of some value. Anything under 5,000 is generally the paper subdivisions at this point. There are other properties sprinkled throughout the county that fall in that category. So we wanted to have one last sort of clean auction where the properties are theoretically viable or were asked to be on here by the city. After this, in the future, there's going to be some other steps we're going to need to take to address how to run those auctions and figure out those properties. So I just want to let you know that was the methodology that went into selecting these properties. You'll also note there's a significant number of properties that are a deficit sale or a potential deficit sale where we've adjusted the minimum bid now. And just to highlight on that sheet, it shows number of times offered, either one or two typically. That's just in recent history. Many of these have been delinquent for several decades and were previously attempted to sell on auctions. But they're before the megabyte system. We don't know exactly when those were. It would require significant research. So we just listed the ones that we had awareness of. So that's why, if you note, some of the prices are set quite low, and that's because there have potentially been several auctions on some of these properties. So I'm happy to answer any questions. We did also, I should note, have to bump the sale back. Our vendor is not yet done with doing the parties of interest research, basically our title reports that come back that tag who the interested parties are. We don't have that information yet. So we've pushed the sale back to May 30th, which is basically as far as we can go without having to recalculate everything and pull this off before the end of the fiscal year. So yeah, again, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Any comments or questions? So I do have a request. I request that we pull property 039-281-530. And I am going to attempt to share my screen to explain as to why that is the case. Let me get to Zoom and share. So as you can see, this property right here that I'm clicking on is a property that covers almost 7 other properties, folks that have built houses over multiple of those properties that kind of overlap. This was originally, I believe, in speaking with Mr. Sullivan, a well with potentially an easement access to the well. I am working with the City of Clear Lake to potentially purchase this and dissolve this property. The idea of selling this to another private individual where they can start deciding to do whatever they want on their property and impact almost 8 other properties, I think is a disservice to the community to keep this on the tax sale. Appreciate Mr. Sullivan somewhat being forced to place all of these on the tax sale, but I request that this item be removed so that we can do a more appropriate action on this property. And I know that we have had multiple conversations regarding this property, so this is not anything surprising to Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, and I would add, there could be other parcels like this out there, and this same principle would apply potentially to how I will attempt to address the paper subdivision lots, where I am mandated to bring this forward. I have to make an attempt to sell it. I have to ask your board to consider the sale, but at the same time, I would recommend not selling it. Selling that property in a tax sale could lead to some really unfortunate consequences for all of the residents on that block. So I understand Supervisor Sabatier's position, and I think it's probably appropriate to work with the city on that.
And just to be clear, you brought the property to my attention prior to putting it on the list because it stands out. So appreciate you doing that. Any comments or questions?
So we're releasing liability because you are offering it and we're rejecting the offer, just so it's clear.
That's correct, yes.
And I've had conversations with the city as well, so they're aware of the status of this property. Opening it up for the public, any comments on this item? And bringing it back to the board for action.
I'll go ahead and offer the resolution with the exclusion of the 039.
Oh, sorry that I...
281-530, right?
The resolution has been offered?
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
Supervisor Pyska?
Yes.
And Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye. Okay, and then the last one on our list outside of calendars, consideration of presentation on discharge of accountability, property tax. And this is both our treasurer tax collector and our auditor controller county clerk. Oh, yes, indeed, not the last one.
Good afternoon. Again, Patrick Sullivan, Treasurer Tax Collector. I'm here with Genevieve Harrington, our Auditor Controller. We wanted to bring this item forward just in the interest of full transparency so that the board and the public are aware of what we are working on and how it impacts the property tax system. As the memo is explained, there are some issues going back to when the Megabyte software system was installed here. Once we migrated our data in, what happened is not all delinquent records were migrated into the Megabyte system. So there have been properties that were delinquent, essentially in the before 1999 to 2001, in that period where we were converting, that don't have the older records associated with them. Some do, some don't. So some records of delinquent properties, let's say the property went delinquent back in the 70s or 80s, we may only have the delinquent years from 1999 on. There's no rhyme or reason to it. We don't know why some were uploaded, some weren't. We understand there was going to be an effort in the past to finish that conversion, but it's incomplete. And what we've learned is that the paper records that we have for backups, those are incomplete. And those records show not just the history of liabilities, but also potentially payments. So really, right now, we have it flagged on some properties that this issue may exist. I believe there are other properties where this issue may exist, but I don't know which ones they are. I really don't have any way to, even if we were to go into the basement of the garage back there into storage and go through all the boxes, we would never know if we've actually completed the picture of what's out there. So it's our recommendation that these debts be discharged at this point. So I've brought forward this recommendation to Ms. Harrington, and I don't know if you want to chime in at all.
Sure, just that, we discussed the approach and that it's just, inappropriate to pursue these bills, assessment, I don't even know what to call it, this partial data, I suppose. And so, yeah, I recommend we discharge it.
And just to be clear, the discharge we're working on is only going to impact those debts that are not in the system. So it actually doesn't result in us taking any action. We'll do basically a memo certifying what we've agreed to. But this is an unusual discharge. Normally, we're identifying a specific amount of debt, and that's part of the reason we wanted to bring it forward in a public item, is that this is the opposite of the normal approach. We don't know what the amount of the debt is, and the level of investigation and cost in determining it is what makes this worthy of a discharge of accountability. So again, if your board has any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Thank you very much for the presentation. Supervisor Green?
Well, if you can't, well, it's hard to discharge a debt you can't calculate. So as you work on this discharge that ain't a discharge, what's the ultimate deliverable? You know, do you just, it's gone, and then whatever paper trail you pick up later, you know, from that will become the new baseline? I guess I'm unclear, having determined, and I don't know how many parcels you're talking about, and you may not even know how many parcels you're talking about, but if you're saying we have a big old data gap of 2+ years that you have no idea what's going on, I would accept that, number one, but you're working on a discharge project, it sounds like. So what are you going to do at the end of this tunnel?
Yeah. So I think the final step here, yes, is going to be agreeing on a date, that anything before that date is going to be discharged, and probably wording to the effect that it's not in the system as of that date, that we will not be including it. It would be problematic, for instance, there's about 400 parcels I'm aware of that this is happening on, and they're all delinquent. And for instance, some of them are in the sale. So if we were to not discharge them, I really couldn't even complete the tax sale, because I don't know. If someone were to walk into my office right now and wanted to pay it off, I wouldn't even know what amount to give, because I can only give the amount based off what we have. So yeah, the discharge we finally set will be a date specific. What is in the system is the record. Anything outside of that, prior to that time, whatever the conversion date is, we'll have to exclude. So,
From the responsibility
right,
in general.
it releases, yeah, that's a good point. It releases my office from the responsibility of having to collect it. In a way, the debt never really goes away in a discharge. It just relieves the county officer of the obligation to collect on it. It would bring this process to a standstill, because if I give someone an amount that's wrong, that puts the county in a difficult position, and one that we don't want to be in with our taxpayers. And most of the properties involved in this are already upside down. These are properties that were delinquent in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even the 60s, and have been delinquent ever since. So these are properties that are 25 to 60 years of tax default. So most of those that were of value have already sold, either in one of our tax sales over the last 20 years or through a private party sale. So we're really dealing with generally paper subdivisions. The ones that we know of are almost exclusively paper subs. So that's what I suspect the original amount was, and that's probably why it was not a priority at the time.
Is there a discharge procedure in the Revenue and Taxation Code that would allow you to go down the path you described?
Yes. That's what's outlined in the memo.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions regarding this?
And so how many of these are considering again?
It's unknown.
Unknown? The amount of properties?
Yeah.
It's probably going to be like prior to 01.
I suspect, yeah, I mean, we're aware of about 400. I suspect there couldn't be more than 600 or 700 based off what I'm aware of, but I'm reluctant to even say.
That's all I was looking for.
Yeah.
That's all I was looking for. You know, I know that there was a document about paper subdivisions about 10, 15 years ago on our end for a plan for that. So I don't know. I think it's something to consider, not on your end, but for us, you know, to deal with that. I know a lot of them are in my district, so.
I know when I started looking into the defaulted tax properties and I ended up in the dungeon, trying to come up with some documentation. It's hard to say that people, when looking at a property tax default that was going to go on a tax sale, actually went into the dungeon, which is a storage room, but it's kind of underground, that they actually went there to find out all the past tax defaulted amounts. So if they paid off, if we find something, does that mean that it's already been paid, not paid? And I think everything about it is unknown. It's unfortunate. Luckily, it's not like we're going back 10 years and cleaning everything out. We've been using this for at least 20 years. And so the up-to-date stuff is still alive and continued. It's all that historical stuff, pre-computers, unfortunately, but that's part of the problem. And so I think that it's a necessary thing to unburden ourselves of. And I think overall what this discharge means is free storage space for you to be able to fill up with other things, because that's the only benefit that I see out of it, other than you're no longer having to take a look at those things. But I think it's a necessary thing for us to do, focus on what can be collected and move on. So appreciate you bringing this to us. And just so I can make the statement, and we talked about this when we talked about this item before, this is not a low value anything. This is only about discharging prior amounts in the past.
The result of not having a low-value ordinance, I would say.
Yes, this is mostly the result of not having a low-value ordinance.
Oh, touche. If there's no further comments, Supervisor Green, is that still up or new? Okay. Then opening up for public comment. And seeing none, you're not looking for any action, just letting us know what your plan is. Appreciate you letting us know.
All right. Thank you.
We're going to take up 718, consideration of Lake County Library Collection Development Policy. And we should have our librarian, Christopher Veach.
Hello, Board. How are
Hello.
you? So thank you. I'm Christopher Veach, County Librarian, and I'm coming to you today to ask you to approve the Lake County Library Collection Development Policy. This policy guides me and the library in developing the collection and informs the public of the principles on which collection development decisions are based. Its purpose is to serve as a guide to build a diverse, balanced, and high-quality collection that represents a multiplicity of viewpoints. This policy has been in use by the library as a department-level policy for over 20 years with only minor updates. However, it's never been a policy that was approved by the board. While the ultimate responsibility for the library collection rests with the county librarian, I'm bringing this policy before the board now so the board and public is aware of the process by which items are selected to be included in the library collection. And I wanted to just provide some brief highlights about the policy since this is the first time it's coming before your board. So,
We're here.
Okay. So this policy asserts that the purpose of the library collection is to inform, assist, educate, entertain, and enrich individuals within the county. Selection is determined by multiple factors, some of which are importance of subject matter, accuracy, objectivity, literary, intellectual, or artistic quality, the popular demand or potential appeal, the relation to the existing collection, the recreational value, and the quality and suitability of the format. And an item doesn't have to meet all of the criteria in order to be acceptable. And the selection of any given item does not indicate an endorsement of the author's viewpoint. So the policy also asserts that the library believes that full, confidential, and unrestricted access to information is essential for patrons to exercise their rights, which is their First Amendment right to read and view materials in the library. And while anyone is personally free to reject books and other materials for themselves, they may not restrict the free choice of others. Only parents and guardians have the right and responsibility to guide and direct the reading, listening, and viewing choices of their own child. If people do have a concern about library resources, the policy lists the procedures that the library will take to address those concerns. It's my hope that any concern that comes about materials is an opening for a conversation on the principles of our collection development policy and the freedom to read, But there is a form library residents can fill out called a Statement of Concern about Library Resource. And once I receive that form, I, as the county librarian, will review the material in its entirety and assess if it meets the criteria of the policy. The item will remain available throughout the review, and only current residents of Lake County can submit a statement, and I'll respond in 60 days. The same item will not be eligible for review again for a period of a year. And I'm happy to answer any additional questions you have about the collection development policy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Veach. Are there any questions or comments regarding this? Supervisor Green?
Yeah, thank you, Director Veach. Just on the last page of the policy, the freedom to view statement, and I love the freedom to read statement and everything it stands for, but this one looks like it dates back to 1990, and it may not be fully inclusive of internet access and stuff like that. And I know this just reflects a long-standing policy that the library itself has enforced. But I'm just looking at that particular clause, and I'm wondering if the ALA Council still exists as stated in this, or if there's been any update to the freedom to view statement.
I believe I included it, the most recent freedom to view statement, which was endorsed by 1990. And I think while a lot of it is based on film and video, which was the original purpose of the freedom to view statement, and it's still useful to the library to have that wording in there. But that still exists, and that's still something that the ALA, the American Library Association, still promotes and uses.
Thank you. You're not aware of any updates since that?
No, that's the 1990 version is the most recent one that I have found.
Any other comments or questions? The way that I see this as I'm reading through it is the library is the marketplace of ideas. Come and find any new or current viewpoint that you have, or open your mind to creative thought with fiction and all types of genres. So I love this, I support this, and thank you very much for bringing this to us. Anything further from our public? Thank you for hanging in there with us. It's been a long one today.
Was there a recommended action?
The action would be
Oh,
for
there
you
it is.
to approve the policy.
Got it, okay.
All right, I'm bringing it back to the board for action.
Then I will do just that. If there's nothing further, Honorable Chair, I move to approve the Lake County Library Collection Development Policy.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And I have failed to mention, and I apologize, that 5.29 will be taken up most likely March 5th, but at a later date it will be taken up. And so that concludes all of our open session items other than our calendars. And who is ready for calendars?
I'll go.
Our Vice Chair Crandall.
All right, so I'll start with so I'll go back a couple of weeks because we had last week off. Went to D.C. I went with the Robinson Rancheria Tribe. I'm the vice chair of the tribe, so I'm able to go on specific trips here and there. So not in the position of chair any longer because I want to concentrate fully on my supervisorial position, but still serve in that capacity. So I was able to go and take care of some county business as well as going with the tribe. Was able to visit with Senator Alex Padilla, of course Congressman Thompson's office, but we had dinner with him Tuesday night. You ended up leaving that night. You had to leave earlier, but you were able to meet with him in the office. And so just a lot of discussion. I know one of the discussions that we had that I know that he mentioned, and I'll go ahead and just kind of go to my RCRC notes because he talked about this couple of things, and one being the Insure HR 6944 that's coming out that he is a co-sponsor on, and that is a federal bill aimed at addressing property insurance crisis. And so it promises to have a positive impact on the availability and affordability of property insurance in California, particularly in high wildfire risk areas where insurers are currently withdrawing from the market. And then there's a lot more on it. I can give more information later. However, just wanted to highlight that that is something the RCRC is fully backing as well. I know another bill, a bipartisan tax deal that he's co-sponsoring as well with Congressman LaMalfa, is it is the bipartisan tax bill, and it is a $78 billion tax package for relief for families and workers of 2024, which holds significance in California, and that's for victims of taxation after fire, an effort by Congress to exempt wildfire relief payments from federal income taxes encompassing various elements such as legal fees, emotional distress, lost wages, and additional living expenses. And so it streamlines the process for deducting losses incurred due to disasters. The funding for this legislation, this comprehensive legislation, is secured through a bipartisan agreement reallocating previous designated funds intended for COVID relief. So they're basically going to reallocate or whatever was left over from COVID and try to put that into this. So just wanted to mention those two because he mentioned those at dinner, and so just wanted to mention that because it's very important, and glad to know that there's something else that we have aside from our state option. Not saying it's still in the process. It's not like it's done, but they're working on something, so that was good to hear. What's that?
Adam Schiff's.
Yeah, that was Adam. Yeah, he's they're still waiting on McConnell to address or come about it. I think that's what it said right here. Let me see, just to make sure. I don't want to misquote it. Oh, they're waiting for him. He hasn't disclosed his stance, but he eventually will. There's some Senate Republican tax writers that have indicated preference for their own markup of the bill, but so it might introduce some amendments. But all in all, they're working on it together. So that's good news. I hope. Let's see. Padilla's office, that was basically to talk about, Lake County issues, but also in particular, they wanted to talk about the Walker Ridge project that Senator Padilla put in place for the Moloch-Loic renaming of the Berryessa as Snow Mountain Monument, and so that was a topic of discussion as well. And among the other things, I also visited the forestry. I spoke with the tribal liaison Terry Logson, and she referred me to Frank Abley, who is supporting a grant. Now, I think the grant is Scotts Valley. I didn't necessarily have the full grant package on me. I just seen the grant announcement. But in talking with them, I just let them know about the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority and the issues we've had in Lake County with fire and whatnot. And it was, to me, I felt like we had a really good discussion. Chairman Cromwell from Robinson was with me, and he had other knowledge about the situation. So I was like, oh, great. It really helped that he was there with me to go ahead and explain that to the forestry department. So that was very helpful as well. So I'm hoping that when they start approving the grant or looking through who they're going to select for that grant, that helped. I hope it helps.
Was that around biomass?
Yes, yes. Let me find the actual, I didn't actually write it, but it's, I've had it, so I'll come back to it because I don't want to miss the other stuff too. Well, yeah, it's the biomass. It was a grant for the way that they'll deal with wood. So that was one of the nominations of it. So that was, so then I came back here last week and went to RCRC. Just talked about some of the things that were going on with that when it comes to the meeting. We're just preparing for the actual board meeting, which will happen next month. But I did want to state that at the GSFA meeting, which is part of RCRC, Golden State Finance Authority, there's 2 pending and 2 closed down payment assistance that Lake County employees have used. So that was really good to hear. Following that meeting, came back for Worth this week. Tomorrow we'll have agenda review. I have a meeting here at the office or a phone call at the office. Lake County Recreation Agency will be Thursday, and then Saturday is the auction. Sheriff's auction?
Sheriff's Ball.
Is it what it's called? Sheriff's Ball?
Sheriff Foundation Ball.
Foundation Ball, okay, I thought it was an auction, a silent auction.
There's an auction.
Okay, wanted to make sure. CAO meeting Monday, and then back here Tuesday.
Thank you very mumuch for that.
Okay. So we also were in DC, but different meetings. We did have this meetings also with Padilla's office and Congressman Thompson's office, and we brought our Lake County issues that we're talking about. But the first day was the FEMA training, which all 4 of us participated in. And then subsequent conversations with FEMA around the national approach on fire insurance. And one of the things that, because it's a state issue, but it's also every state's issue, if it's fire or flood or hurricane or tornado. And so what is the federal government's role, and what are the national threads that could be pulled to kind of bring some policy together that could be really helpful and support the states as they develop policy. So what we talked a lot about what's happening in the state of Alabama in several different workshops and committee meetings. And what's happening in Alabama is really interesting because we know we've been through our own disasters. We've had FEMA here, and the change in thinking is all the proactive work to make sure that when we're talking about climate risk, how can we have economic stability and sustainability? And so it's investing money before there's a disaster to mitigate, major spending. So the data shows that every $1 invested ahead of time saves $7 down the road. So in Alabama, FEMA is investing $10,000 in every house to help with the hurricane, so hurricane ties and roofing and all those things. And that's a pretty low cost if you think about it. But what's happening is they're hardening communities, and now the insurers are just flocking to Alabama. There's not the problem that we're seeing in other states. And that is a project that's happening here with the Home Hardening Project program through FEMA in Kelseyville Riviera. That's cluster hardening a community for climate adaptation. So it's really interesting to have all these conversations with not just our rural colleague partners from California, because we are working on this with my Agriculture, Environment, and Natural Resources Policy Committee with CSAC. We met briefly with our group there to kind of continue the discussions on how we're going to work this year on fire insurance, but also to be working with our national colleagues. So there was a lot happening there. Obviously, this is not something that we're going to solve here today, but the question, it's always really interesting when you have these conversations, particularly with the industry, is the insurance industry is saying, you have to do all these mitigation issues. You have to do defensible space and harden your home and all of those things because that's on you. You're uninsurable. But when we say, well, we have entirely rebuilt communities built to the latest codes, and there's literally no more forest there. Why are these communities uninsured? And they don't have an answer for that. They say, well, because the whole industry, is suffering and losing money and hemorrhaging money. So what is it, right? Is it our responsibility? Is it your responsibility? So there's a whole lot out there. It's still a mess, but having these conversations together, we are kind of making some progress on what, and studying places like Alabama on how we could move forward and what could be beneficial, and when we finally start to see a leveling out. So most of the conversations were circular and in those realms. We did, we did have an opportunity to hear President Biden speak to a whole room full of county supervisors and commissioners, which is really, incredible because he started as a county supervisor, and he, they always say that's where the rubber meets the road. And but then he also said, and they all know where you live, and everybody started laughing because that's the truth. Because when we work at this level, we are embedded in our communities all the time. So Tuesday was our Capitol Hill Day, and we worked on fire insurance, tree mortality, Lake Pillsbury, what else? Several other issues. But anyway, overall, I felt like we got a lot out of it. It was our first time sending a full delegation. It's important to be building those relationships, not just with the electeds, but the staff in the departments and the staff of our electeds. So that was it was a great trip. It was exhausting. We did a whole lot. And then tree mortality task force meeting that I had on the 16th when we came back. Really bad news. Mediterranean oak borer has now moved all the way into Mendocino National Forest. So 2 years ago, we were alerted that it was crossing into Middletown, and now it's countywide. So that is very, very unfortunate. But the Risk Reduction Authority is working to put on a town hall in the spring so we can really bring that education out to the community on how to mitigate this as best we can. But this is an invasive species, and it's devastating our valley oaks and our blue oaks. But there are some things that we can do. Stop moving firewood around for one, but that's really difficult because a lot of people use firewood. So look for that conversation later in the spring. Hopefully it's going to be in April. And then our evacuation corridor grant plan is about to wrap up. We're finishing all the projects there. There was about 100 dead trees being removed from the Soda Bay corridor. The grant wraps up the end of March. So this is the time when all the work is finishing. The trees are almost cut down. But more importantly, our draft of the evacuation plan that we've been working on for a year, we're having another community meeting tomorrow night at Canocti Harbor Inn. This is an open house from 4 to 7. People can come in and give their feedback on that plan, and then it will be adopted by the end of March. And the grant will be successfully completed. It's $380,000. That's been a focus on clearing vegetation from that evacuation route and the plan, and we bought the masticator head. So that's been a big job, and really a lot of really great things have come out of it. We had our a Risk Reduction Authority DEI training on the 20th, which Supervisor Simon, Terry, Logston, Chief Duncan, and Ben Murphy all participated in that. That's a requirement for the APGB grant that we're working through. And then our biomass, we didn't get to do the presentation today, but so much is going on with that, so I'm really excited for our next meeting so you guys can all learn more about that big old project we're working on. And then, let's see. So tomorrow, before the evacuation meeting, we've got the home hardening biweekly meeting. I have the NCO board meeting, and then I will go straight to Canocti for the evacuation meeting. And then Thursday, I have jury duty, so I'm going to be here, see how that goes. And then I'll make the recreation meeting. That's in Clear Lake. Yes. Yeah. And then on March 1st, I'm going to Robinson Rancheria in the afternoon. Saturday, I will be going to the Sheriff's Ball. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to go, but my plans have changed. Sunday is the Fiddler's Jam. I'm not sure if I'll be able to make that. It looks like it's going to be awfully stormy over the weekend, so that may get canceled. Then I've got my meeting with CAO Parker in the morning, and then back on Tuesday.
I actually found the name of the grant. Wood Products Infrastructure Assistance Grants. And one of the things that I really tried to emphasize was the partnership amongst the county and how ready it is. And so that's the important thing that I wanted to emphasize. Seemed to be taken really well with that. And so I just wanted to, I found it on a different, what do they call, not Google, and then you have the Safari. You have them all kind of, you think you could find them, but yeah, that's what it was called. And so that's what Frank sent to me. So I wanted to make sure I highlighted that.
Scotts Valley applying for
I think they're they're the lead on it, but it's amongst partnering with different agencies. And so again, I didn't have the complete details, so I took the approach of just sharing what Lake County's done since the fires took place, and just gave what insight I had, because also I'm not on the Lake County Risk Reduction Authority any longer, but knowing what we've gotten from here just was able to explain that. And again, I didn't even expect, Chair Cromwell to come with me, but he kind of knew a different side of things that really helped in that capacity. And you know what? When I went back to my calendars, I forgot to mention, well, didn't forget, I skipped over this. I actually went to Sacramento yesterday. They had a California Tribal Nations Summit with the governor and basically his cabinet and staff and whatnot. And so there was a question and answer session. Usually they only allow the one tribal leader to speak, but one of the other leaders didn't. So I asked if I can take his time, and I stated that in my minutes I stated to the governor that I would like to see a way for them to crack down on fentanyl sales. It's killing our children and families. And then I said, with that being said, meth sales are actually nickel and diming us, and it's the silent killer and the slow leak to everything, really. So if we can look at that and our resources locally, tribally, and even at their level, it's drained because of this concept. And I know this because in my district, in your districts, everybody's districts, we have people committing small crimes, petty theft, and a lot of it's tied to meth. And so that was my comment. Along with that, also illicit grows in the hills. And then saying, you do have carte blanche to activate the National Guard. And so I mentioned that as well. And so he did make a comment. I didn't really get, I recorded it, so I didn't get to, kind of decipher what he said, but he was actually commenting how they're working on something to do with catching the sales, working with China to catch the sales in a different country like Mexico or something like that, saying it's working. But I really wanted to look further into it before I know if that's really what was the answer that I was getting. That was actually something. So, but the 1 minute turned into 6 minutes, so it was good because some others didn't go that long. So I had a couple of people come up to me afterwards and say, I actually texted the Human Services, state rep, and I texted this person, and from the state staff. So I had a couple of other topics of discussion on that too. So even though I went for the tribe, I was able to bear fruit in other ways as well to try to highlight, because we're all dealing with the same problems, whether it's tribal government, county government, or city government. This is what a lot of other folks brought up. Housing, they brought up, homelessness, they brought up all of those other things. I didn't want to harp on that, and I didn't hear this being mentioned, so I mentioned it. So.
It's like fire, it doesn't have a jurisdiction, it covers everything, unfortunately. Right. Thank you for that. Supervisor Green?
Well, it's underachiever hour here. I thank my colleagues for the extensive report on their extensive advocacy, and I appreciate it truly, and I hope this community does. We are well served when our elected representatives go outside county to fight the good fight on our behalf. That said, my report will be fairly brief. I did meet with our Scotts Valley Community Advisory Council yesterday. We have a kind of a new mix of the board there, and it's exciting to see them pick up where last year's council left off, and they have so many things, but it's hard for them to follow the bouncing ball, and it's kind of hard for me to advocate on their behalf to follow the bouncing ball as well. So without putting anybody on the spot, I am going to be reaching out to Terry and Director De Leon and whoever I can get from Water Resources. They have several subjects of specific interest that they're looking for an update on sooner than later, and I would appreciate some backup on that. So I'll put out an email on that. Tomorrow, a reminder, thank you, Chair Sabatier. First Five Commission will be meeting, and I have a time conflict with the IHSS committee, which is reborn and finally going to meet after a long period of dormancy. So I want to make sure I'm paying attention to that group appropriately, and if there are any time conflicts I need to resolve in future months, I will address that at that time. And you know what? I'm just going to leave it at that because I cannot possibly follow that act, and I'm not even going to try. Chair Sabatier, you carry on because I know you are going to have a full report too.
I'll try to be brief, and thank you. I was really excited about our NACO trip. The sessions were good. The connection with other colleagues were good. What's exciting is I am now part of NACO's Health Steering Committee. I co-sponsored a resolution to be sent to Congress to revise our rural EMS reimbursement rates, which is a huge issue for us. And I'm keeping track of where that might be, waiting for that to be finalized from the NACO side so I can also provide that to our congressman and see if he's able to take that on and is interested in it. Just on a little side note, some of the work that's been going on when it comes to the EMS, I don't know if I'm repeating myself from the last meeting, but there are currently 17 students at Lower Lake High School that are taking the EMT courses, and I know that Clear Lake High School already has 20 students lined up and is hoping to get their program started next semester. So now we'll have multiple schools and potentially more added into that want to take on this program, and that's really exciting. Really thankful that Canuck Unified just jumped on that and made it happen in less than 3 months, which is amazing. One of the, at the Health Steering Committee, one of the things that was interesting, I'm sure most of us may or may not know about DARPA. DARPA is basically the inventor of the internet, the inventor of GPS and many other technologies that we use regularly nowadays. They are just an innovation department that really aims to move technology forward. Well, they've taken that concept and they've applied it to healthcare. So I don't know why they didn't call it HARPA, but it's ARPA-H. And it's basically healthcare innovation at a absolute intense schedule where if 6 months or 3 months down the road you're not seeing the outcomes of this project, scrap it, move on to the next one. It's high intensity, and I believe they said that the people that work on those projects are only staying for 1 to 2 years, and then they recycle to get new people because they want to get fresh eyes and fresh brains on ensuring that we're innovating in the area of healthcare. And knowing that our health metrics are where they are, that is something that definitely perked my ears, and I will be continuing those conversations with the Health Steering Committee on how it is that we can capitalize on those innovations as well. Some of them are really looking at a almost like a mobile emergency room unit. They had a whole system set up. They showed us the blueprints, had a CAT scan machine within one of those mobile units and everything. And so, again, reaching areas that are hard to serve where people may not have quick and direct access. I thought that it's just interesting to see where we're going and what we're creating in order to solve today's problems. Had some good conversations regarding Army Corps of Engineers, really amazing session to go to. So one thing that I learned that I was not aware of until I just put the puzzle pieces together is the Army Corps of Engineers is, we have yet to have a conversation with them, hopefully we will soon, but they will be involved with Lake Pillsbury at one point or another. It's not just FERC, it's not just DWR at the state level, but it will also be the Army Corps. And so I think that we need to make those connections, have those conversations, and start there. FEMA also provides funding, this was in our first Friday FEMA session, provides funding to help cover the cost of the non-federal district for Army Corps of Engineer projects. We're very nervous about the price tag of Middle Creek restoration. We know it's important. How do we get there? There's waivers, there's FEMA funding, and there's also very low interest loans, and having those pathways and avenues available to us will lead us to the right place on what it is that we need to do to make sure that we move those things forward. USDA was probably one of the more exciting sessions with the Secretary of Agriculture. I felt like he was specifically speaking about the project that is being discussed at our Food Policy Council, where the idea is to decentralize food production and bring it back to the local community so that we can be self-sustaining and all of that. They're picked up some paperwork for value-added grants where you not just grow your own products, your own produce and fruits, but you add that value to enhance your economic viability with your agricultural business. There's a lot of potential funding dedicated specifically to not creating, but supporting local farmers rather than large commercial corporate farmers. And I think that everything that they spoke directly to me in the conversations that we're having at our local food production policy. And in fact, our Food Policy Council has attracted the attention of CDFA. Their first time that they approached us in the meeting, they already offered a $300,000 grant to one of our farmers that happened to be at that committee meeting. And so we're getting the attention that we need, and now we just got to put the pieces together to figure out what kind of grant funding we want to go out for. So between USDA, the health, and the Army Corps of Engineers, to me, those were the highlights of the information that I gathered and able to come back with in order to continue the work that we're doing. We just, Supervisor Green and myself finished but continued the strategic plan for the next 5 years for First Five. That meeting will also continue and occur on this Wednesday for our First Five Commission. As far as tomorrow, I have agenda review, a Lakeport shelter update. I'm working with PEG TV to figure out some of our issues that we're dealing with. And after my First Five meeting, I'll be going to Lake County Fire Protection District to listen in and see what they're up to. And then, other than Saturday, where I'm meeting with our Little League and the Sheriff Gala, I will be, I don't know what the following week looks like, but meeting with our CAO and preparing for Tuesday's meeting, and that is all that I have at this moment in time. So we will be, unless we have a do-over?
You're off the hook for tomorrow. Looks like my IHS test ain't happening. So, First Five.
Thank you very much. And so if everything is done, we have our closed session left with 8.1, Public Employee Evaluation, title Special Districts Administrator, 8.2, Public Employee Evaluation, title Community Development Director, CAO Parker.
We are rescheduling 8.2 and 8.3.
We will be rescheduling those two, thank you. And 8.4, Conference with Legal Counsel, Significant Exposure to Litigation Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D2.E1, one potential case. And 8.5, Conference with Legal Counsel, Existing Litigation Pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1, Earth Waste Foundation, Inc., v. County of Lake et al. And with that, we will go into closed session, and thank you for everyone that has joined us.